Hello folks and welcome to our game. Myself Shane Stilton, joined as ever by Michael Verney and brought to you by OurGameSupporters.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off. There's a huge range of brilliant jerseys there. Reminder also, we're running the live GA Club Friend fundraisers on Our Game. Email events@ourgame.ie to get plenty more information on that. Michael, how are tricks to do this morning?
All good, Shane. Oh yeah, all good. Up bright and early. Another busy weekend. Unfortunately, I ended up only listening to the penalties on the radio in Auckland yesterday. But my God, that sounded absolutely epic.
Yeah, it was class. I mean, Armagh, they just love penalty shootout heartache, don't they? I know they obviously don't, but
it's a killer. That's a killer to lose. Like when you look at it, losing All-Ireland quarter-final to a team that's really close to winning All-Ireland final and then losing Ulster final. And like anything can happen in penalties, but it is a difficult one. They just need to get over the line in one of those games. But the drama in the build-up to the game and, the various things going on in the build up to the game, and then for the game to, almost, I couldn't believe it that it turned out the way it did. Just is so dramatic and unbelievable. Probably a statement win from Derry, I'd have to say.
Yeah, brilliant. Like to retain the Ulster title, given what had happened this past week. I mean, obviously we can't really comment on the situation with Rory Gallagher stepping back, as he says, and it's crucial. Like I think we all straight away noted the wording was stepping back rather than stepping down. So maybe it's kind of a case of seeing what happens with the situation with, his estranged wife and what comes of that. Do things die down a little bit and he can come back in? Or maybe we're kind of zoning in on the wording too much and that's him just totally gone. But like Kieran Mina, he was asked about it. Are you going to be in charge for the next match after the game? You can understand totally why he would not really want to answer that. It's a tough one for him. What can he say really? Because it's such a sensitive one that he can't really make a comment either one way or the other. But and it's nothing to do with the players. So you can only commend them and the way they got over the line here. The quality of their penalties. Obviously, one was saved. Paul Cassidy's was saved, but the other ones from McGuigan, he put the man the wrong way, and the other two into the roof of the net. Conor Glass is clipping the other side of the crossbar. They were wow. It was like Galway all over again for Armagh. Remember how good Galway was?
Yeah, it was outrageous. Just to go back to the Derry players. It's an unbelievable achievement given everything that was going on in the previous week that they were able to keep their minds focused on the game. And like when you think about it, they hadn't won an Ulster title in a good chunk of time before last year, and then to go and back it up, does this increase their stock in the All-Ireland, and the All-Ireland contention as well? I think it probably does realistically.
Does. Look, we've got Tony Considine coming in now. Tony, how are you doing?
How are you doing, boys? How are you getting on?
We're not so bad.
Good, Tony. You got the technology and everything working okay this morning?
Look, I learned a lot from you the last time, boys. You know what I mean,
Yeah, well, great to have you here this morning. We're going to go straight to the Clare victory over Waterford the other day, 222 to 16 points. What's your reflections on it now, a couple of days after?
A bit disappointing, really. We had two classic games, really, in the last number of weeks between Limerick and Clare and Cork and Tipperary. So, everyone going to Thurles on Saturday, really, were under the impression we were going to get another classic, that Waterford really got out, they got a way out when Tipperary and Cork drew in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, so I was hoping it wouldn't be a draw in Páirc Uí Chaoimh because, I wanted the result there because it gives everyone a better chance, but I said the draw had opened it up for everybody, and especially Waterford. Waterford were in a magnificent position going into Thurles. I said they'll come out now, they'll be firing guns everywhere, when they come out onto the field, and you could sense even when they come out onto the field that real energy wasn't in the team, and I was questioned against Limerick as well because when they were played Limerick, they were in a position to win the game, definitely should have won the game against Limerick, but they really lacked that kind of energy and that togetherness, when you see in a team. I believe that the Waterford fitness is not great now. That's my opinion from looking from afar from it. I didn't think their fitness was up to scratch that you'd need for this championship because, as you know, lads, this is a dog-eat-dog championship, And if you're not in proper frame and proper condition, I think you could be taken out. And Waterford were really taken out they went out with a whimper, really, didn't they, on Saturday, I mean, to say if they won the game, they were back into it. And, even if they won the game in Sart, they had a chance of getting to the Munster final if things went well as well. So I just to know what's gone wrong there. This is the second year it has happened. Liam Cahill got fair stick last year when it happened in Ennis, when they thrown in the towel in Ennis, you know. So when a team starts doing that, it's not good, you know. And Waterford hurling, I think at the moment, it's not in a great place at the moment, I think, you know. And look, a lot of people have to take responsibility, but I just couldn't understand the tactics they were using in Sarda. There was only one tactic to use in Sarda, and that was go for it, you know.
And just on that, Tony, like we all know Waterford is an off-the-cuff team, don't we? Generally, down through the years, Ken McGrath, John Milan, Dan, Big Dan, Tony Brown, etc. Like, were you expecting them to take off the shackles on Saturday night? I know I was, to an extent anyway, and just go for it.
Yeah, but I think everybody was expecting that, Michael, you know. But obviously the Waterford crowd weren't expecting it because they never turned up. The Waterford supporters did not turn up, and they haven't turned up for any game this year for them, you know. So that's a bad sign, you know. That's a bad sign. When you see that happening, you're saying, what's wrong here? You know, are the vibes good? You know, I didn't think that Waterford were up for the game. And look, at Clare weren't great now in the first half of Saturday either. Let's be honest here. It was a poor game. It was a real poor game in the first half. But I suppose when Brian got him in at half time, he said, "Hey lads, these fellas don't hope too much. We've got to go out and win this game, you know." And obviously they didn't. They wouldn't pulling it up. You know what I mean? You ask any Clare person coming home, while they were happy with the win, they were saying, look, geez, if we play like that against the next day against Cork, we won't be going anywhere, you know. So they have a lot to work on or think about this week, and I'm sure they'll do that, you know what I mean? But look at Waterford were poor opposition, went out and it's not nice to see. I think it's not nice to see any county failing like that. I don't mind where you're from. We're all native of somewhere. We all want to see good hurling. We want to see good contests. And if we don't get that, I think it's a big disappointment, really. You know, it's a huge disappointment. I think especially that the Munster Championship has been so good up to now, that this brought it down a bit on Saturday. You know.
Do you know, when you go through Clare's performance, Tony Kelly was obviously excellent. He scored 13, albeit I think we were all surprised to see Darragh Lyons marking him in the full back line for much of the game. Aidan McCarthy wasn't playing. And, like, you know, they were saying in the analysis beforehand that, you know, Tony Kelly's just as good a free taker, but I think he does miss one or two. And, like, he's obviously a brilliant player, but he does miss one or two. So if he's injured for a long period, that's a blow. But, you know, what was your overall feeling about Clare in this game, and what's the mood like in Clare?
The mood is very good in Clare at the moment. I believe Clare didn't reach anywhere near they could play on last Saturday. That's my own belief. Everyone has an opinion, as you know. But I think Clare hurling is on a high at the moment. The Minors won last week. They won the Munster Minor Championship. We beat Tip in the under-20 the Monday night before that. And we were in Thurles again last Saturday. We have the road warden going to Thurles. You know, we were there 3 times last week, you know.
Yes, you could be wearing a worse road, couldn't you?
You could, you know, and didn't the great road at times either, you know. I mean, the motorway is good, you know what I mean. At least there's a road out of it, you know what I mean. You know, that's a good thing, you know.
Well, you're in Richmond, Borrisley on the way through, stopping in the shops there and buying stuff. So fair play to you there.
Is there shops in Borrisley? But no, it's I think Tip or Clare are in a good place at the moment. As I said, the under-20s are in the final tonight against Cork in the Gaelic grounds. And, you know, I think this has all come from really the senior team having the year they had last year. When your flagship team is doing well, I think it lifts everybody. And I think Clare have done that. The way the senior team performed last year in the Munster Championship, I think everyone around Clare and the management of Clare teams are very sound fellas as well now. We've Bach O'Connell there over the minor team. He was there last year and lost to Tipperary in the Munster minor final in penalties. You know, so I mean, a great game. It was a great game, and it's supposed to be a great game for Tipperary as well. You know, and you went on to win the All Ireland. Luckily enough, you beat. I don't know how you know that. You probably stole it anyway, but you won it anyway. You know, poor awfully, Michael. You know what I mean? So they all get the break.
Tony, you're taking pops to everybody this morning, even inadvertently.
But anyway, look, at the end of the day, lads, you're thinking to yourself, once the senior team is done well, I think it lifts everybody. And I think Clare have put a management teams in place of their teams. You know, the old guard has gone in Clare, and I think the new guard is doing a great job. And I think the man that has taken a lot of credit for that is Brian Lohan. I think Brian has come in, he's managed the team very well. And I'm sure he'd had a say in who with the minors and with the under-20s as well, you know, because they're the future of Clare, really. And I think that's a very good thing to see. But look, we still have to go out next Sunday and try and get through to the Munster final or stay in the Munster in the All-Ireland series, and that's not going to be easy as well, you know. But it's nice to see things going very well at the moment, and things are going well. As you know, if they're not going well, it gives a county a bad feel, and I think that's happening in Waterford. I think Waterford, all their teams are not going well, and I think it's a reflection really when the senior team don't do well, every other team maybe follows that as well.
Yeah, Michael, I'll throw this at you, right? So Waterford, it's their 6th championship defeat in a row. They played like a team inside out with Darragh Lyons in the full back line, and then you had the likes of Conor Prunty and Conor Gleeson maybe further out the field. When they were taking their puck outs, they were basically, and I said this to you after the Cork game, that their full back line was outside the 45. So like if you lose the ball when you're trying to run it out, you're totally wide open in defence. So I couldn't get my head around it. Like even for Davy, and you know, like I remember, like we've given him a platform plenty of times on Off the Ball a couple of years ago, and we had a show there. We brought him on one day. He was under fire, and he was talking about his tactics and explaining them and all that. So we've always tried to give him, you know, the kind of the rub of the green or whatever you want. But like it's 1 win in the last 10 championship games for him between Wexford and Waterford. It's 3 in the last 16, and they're Laois, Carlow, and obviously the Leinster final against Kilkenny. So he's on a particularly bad run. And like it seemed to all culminate in this game because it was just a total no-show. And they've 5 red cards in 8 games this year as well. So discipline as well. It just seems to be so many things wrong.
Yeah, their scoring averages, Shane, as well. Like I think it's 17.67 their average in championship games. Like they haven't scored a goal. They haven't even reached the 20-point mark. Like, you know, 16 or 17 points, lads, in modern hurling could be a half-time score if you're flying it. Do you know what I mean? If you're going really well. They shot 6 points in the second half. I couldn't get over. They stayed in the dressing room about 20 minutes at half-time, and they came out, and I'm thinking, these boys are surely going to be G'd up or whatever. And they came out kind of limp enough, and Clare had the game basically won in that third quarter. It's just very, very hard to get your head around some things that were going on. Like, and I think let's just say, I know Liam Cattle moved Jack Fagan back, wing back, and I think that was basically to match up with Hegarty or Morrissey. And to me, it made sense. He was trying something different in his third year. But then, like, I think for him to stay there and for him to be full back at different stages the other day, like, to me, he's the best ball winner they have, and he's playing in their half back line or playing in their full back line or playing sweeper. I just couldn't get my head around some things they were doing. The puck out thing is a mad one, Shane, really. They get the ball out to the 45, everyone disperses and they're gone. If they're turned over, as they were when Tony Kelly got that flick on, I can't remember who it was going through. Tony Kelly got the flick, he flicks it out, balls up the other end of the field. There's nobody there. Like, there's nobody home. Very, very hard. I just think the whole thing has been overtaught and probably overcoached as well. Like, to me, as I said to Tony there a couple of minutes ago, to me, Waterford are an instinctive team. They're an off-the-cuff team. And I think that looks to have been taken out of them to some respect. Even like Ozzie Gleeson, like, we weren't going to see, it just didn't look like we were going to see any flicks or any bits of magic or anything the other day. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's kind of been coached out of them to some respect. They just look like a team that are playing in shackles. And even someone like Patrick Kern, who I've great time for, particularly in the last couple of years, I think he was one of Cattle's best players. For him to be reduced to a bit part role, that doesn't really sit that well with me now, I have to say.
What was the contrast between the score and the average scoreline that they had last year versus this year?
Yeah, it was 26.75 last year. And that was in a Munster campaign that they didn't play particularly well, but they banged in a heap of goals. I think they ended up with 7 goals. That's like 9 points of a difference. Like, that's 26.75. That has you competitive in every game. That has you beating Tipperary in the game. It has you within 3 of Limerick. It has you close to Cork as well. But like, they pale in significance. And I just think, like, I don't think Waterford people are buying this idea of a project at the moment. Like,
they're not following anyway.
No, at the end of the day, lads, Waterford were in the All-Ireland final 3 years ago. They were in the All-Ireland semi-final 2 years ago. They won the league last year. Like, this, as somebody said to me, like, Davy hasn't taken over the Renford Reject soccer team where they've like no ability or no class. Like, Waterford have loads of classy players. And I don't know. I'd have question marks of whether people are buying into this project and maybe even whether players are buying into the project as well. And I think the off-season is going to be an interesting one to see if it's the same personnel on the line next year as it is at the moment.
What's your reading, Tony? Yeah, go ahead.
It's amazing there. You said there were 20 minutes in the dressing room. I suppose the longer they stayed in the dressing room, the longer they were going to be in the championship. You know what I mean? So you have to look at it that way as well. But what went on in that 20 minutes? You know, was it picked out where they could win the game? Or was it picked out, was their head filled with tactics again? That's what I'm asking. Like, what was said at halftime, being so long in the dressing room for 20 minutes, what kind of messages were they getting at halftime? Because they completely collapsed in the second half. They completely collapsed. Like, let's be honest, this was a no-show in the second half for Watford, you know. So, and you said there about, you know, they're getting less than 20 points a game. I think they've got about 53 points in the 3 games they've played, and I think they have conceded 370. I think that's the amount. That's with a sweeper now, and maybe 2 sweepers at times. They're conceding that amount, you know. Now, but when I looked at the full forward line of Watford, it was picked for Sunday, right? Last Sunday, or Saturday. It was Stephen Bennett, Austin Gleeson, and Deise Hutchinson. Now, if you ask anyone in the country about them 3 players, they'd all say they're 3 players that you would have to keep an eye on if they were in the full forward line. You know, every one of them is capable of winning a match, really, you know. But sure, they weren't in the full forward line. Sometimes I looked at Deise Hutchins, he was out at midfield and things like that. But I think the biggest mistake of all was to put Darragh Lyons back and Tony Kelly. Now, whatever chance Darragh Lyons had of taking on Tony Kelly around the middle of the field, he had no chance whatsoever of taking him on around the full back line. Because Kelly was, like, I'd say he had dizzy spells from following him, really, with all due respects, like, because Kelly was going all over the place. Kelly was fantastic as Saturday. And we all know Kelly's probably one of the top players in the country, you know. You need a good man marker, and you need a defender to mark him. I was surprised they didn't put somebody like maybe Conor Gleeson on him, you know, who's a good tight marker. Now maybe he'd do the same to Conor Gleeson, but at least Gleeson would have the experience of being a defender.
And the instincts, Tony, as well. The defensive instincts.
The instincts of being a defender, and maybe he'd upset him in some way, you know what I mean? Because he's a fairly hardy boy now, Gleeson, you know. So I was thinking, like, what are they doing here, you know? And like, you look at the Clare half-back line. Diarmuid Ryan, who was picking him up when he got up the field? Like, he was going up. I mean, he shot David goal. You know, David McInerney, you know, no problem. Get the ball, look up. He was finding his John Conlon the same, you know. They were completely all over the shop, Watford, really, you know, in hurling terms. But you're right there when you say what? The great Watford team, or any Watford hurler I've seen that has been really good. And the teams they always played off the cuff. And they were brilliant to watch. You know what I mean? I know they didn't win in All-Ireland. They may be very unlucky in the noughties that they didn't win in All-Ireland. But you have to say, even if they didn't win in All-Ireland, that they were probably one of the best teams that we have seen for entertainment in that number of years. You know, for the last 20 years, you have to say that Watford really, really entertained people. But and the crowd followed them big time. You had massive crowds following Watford. You know, I'd say it was 5 or 6, 7 to 1 nearly as Saturday and Thurles with Clare. Watford
just on your point there, Tony. Watford are not good to look at. They're not enjoyable at the moment. They are not enjoyable games to watch.
They were a year ago.
They were a year. Like, that's the thing about it. A year ago, they were just goals. They were so hungry for goals, and they had a couple of chances the other day. And obviously, we'll go into it. They had a red card as well the other day, which you know greatly affected things too. But they're not good to look at. They've been involved in the Limerick game was interesting. I would say it was a different type of game.
But still not good to look at.
No, the Cork game. No contest.
Yeah, there was no show.
Yeah, and that was a bit of a no contest the other day. Fair enough. They're not going to concede, you know, massive tallies. They're probably not going to concede a 330 or something like that. They're not going to be hit for a heap of goals. But it's not good to look at. It's not good on the eye, especially in comparison to what the other 4 teams are doing in Munster.
You see, they're not playing to their potential. It's as simple as that. And they're not playing to their potential. Is it because of the tactics they're being told to do? You know, I see Watford players looking to the line when they don't play the right ball. You know, that's not a way to go out and play hurling. You have to have freedom.
So is it down to Davy then, Tony?
Well, you know, he's the manager of the team. And when the team don't perform, I'm sure he'd take responsibility for it. I don't know whether he does or not. But you have to take responsibility. We were all in manager's seats and things like that. And when your team, it's okay maybe if 2 or 3 of your players don't perform. There's much you can do, and you'll have that in any given day that few fellas won't perform. Maybe it is nerves, maybe it is something, whatever, you know. But when maybe 15 of them don't perform, that's serious, you know, that's serious. That's something back to the management of the team, whether that's the physical trainer, the strength and conditioning man, or the nutritionist or whatever, you know, it's big words now, you know, but it's back to somebody. But the responsibility and the buck always stops with the manager. The manager is responsible for the team going on the field, and they have to perform. Now, Watford are not performing. They have good players. I named 3 of them there in the full forward line. I mean, if you had a full back line against them, you'd say, you had to be on your alert today, lads. If the ball is coming in around here, these lads will finish, if they get any chance at all. But the way they're playing, they just could not do that, could not do it. Jack Fagan playing a sweeper, to me, that's not on. And still continuing playing the sweeper and the down a man. And you want to get to stay in the championship. There was no way that was going to happen, You have to go all out for it, really. And it's unfair on players if they're tied by tactics, really, that's able to hurl. You can imagine tying up Tony Kelly with a tactic. I mean, wouldn't you take everything away from him maybe if you'd done that?
Some would say he was tied up for a while.
And Shane O'Donnell.
They were tied up, yeah. We won't say any more about for a while there, Michael, but they were, Tony Kelly went from maybe being hurler of the year and a young hurler of the year in 2013, and tactics took him back then for the next 2 or 3 years in his game. Under Lohan, he has really prospered under Lohan, hasn't he? I would say, and maybe I'm very biased, I would say Tony Kelly has been the hurler of the year for the last 2 to 3 years in Ireland. Maybe that's been biased now, and that's not against anybody that got us. You have to win in All Ireland to get the hurler of the year. They usually come from that. But I think Kelly has been the best player in the country for the last 2 or 3 years in what he has achieved. He's gone out every day for there. He got 13 points. He gets 16 points. Look at the tackle he made in that fella going through. I think it was Fitzgerald. Hit the ball away. And what did he do when he got the ball? He laid it off right away to Cathal Malone, the ball at the other end of the field, to Dave Fitzgerald, passes it on to Ian Galvin, ball in the back of the net. That all came from Tony Kelly. The one thing Tony Kelly has, he's a brilliant, along with being a brilliant individual, he's a brilliant team player as well. And he's got that freedom to express himself from Brian Lohan. He's got that. He's going all over the field. I remember Tony Kelly playing a few years ago. I think it was against Waterford. He was collecting ball all day in his full back line. Sure, he's going to do no damage from there. You know what I mean? You want a guy like that that's able to hurl. You want him punishing any mistake that the opposition is making up the field, and he will do that. He will do it now. Yeah,
whereas now Tony, he's actually he's tracking back, but he could be corner forward the next minute. He could be centre. You know what I mean? He's not. I think he's given a flexibility now, because lads like that, with really great hurlers, you don't need to. You just tell them to go and play as they see, really. And I think he's been told to play it as he sees it now as well.
A really good hurler with a brain, you don't need to tell him to do anything. It's the same as a jockey, the jockey riding a horse. I remember talking to a trainer down here. I said, what would you advise a jockey to do when he's riding a horse? He said, you never have to tell the good ones anything. You never have to say anything to them. And I said, what do you tell the other ones? You tell them to F off. He said, you don't want to.
Can I just tell you a good one on that, actually, Tony? It's gas that you say that. The best trainer in the world is probably Willie Mullins, best national hunt trainer in the world. He generally does not give his jockey any instructions before a race. He, like in the biggest races, he trusts them to do, what he thinks he sees before him, to take a gap if it's there, to not take a gap if it's there. Sometimes I think we get tongue-tied in hurling and the GA and strangle people, whereas the best lads just say, play it as you see it. Do what you think is best.
Nicky Quaid has no set puckouts, by the way. Nicky Quaid has no set puckouts. He plays.
Of course, he has no set puckouts, because this thing about puckouts. The puckout. The goalie in my book is always there to do maybe one important thing. That's to stop goals. And then say, his puckouts are awful. You know what I mean? And I hear this rubbish. His puckouts are awful. Like, it's up to the man out the field to win the ball. When you go in a contest up for a ball against you, it's up to you to win that ball. But I see fellas with their hands up, they're 40 yards out in the loose, they want the ball into their hand, they get it, it falls out of it. Next thing it goes after hurley, and the next thing the ball is over the bar. Win your own ball, I think. And I think the game is going to like that again now. Nicky Quaid will lace that ball out. Why would he? Why would he be worried about it? He's a man 6'5" above that, he'll put his hand up, or he'll bring it to ground and things like that, So we're in a situation here where the goalie has the most important job he has to do is stop the conceding goals. Puck out. I often see years ago, the goalie wasn't able to puck out the ball. It was the full back was pucking it out, you know what I mean? I know we're going back in time here, lads, but that was it, you know what I mean? But he was still a good goalkeeper. Now to say if he's not able to pick a fella 80 yards away with the puck out, we won't play him or whatever like that. I just think he's gone overboard. As you say, it's the men out the field have to win the ball, and I think that's what Limerick have done.
Well, surely there's a balance too on the puck outs. Like, you have to have a goalie with a laser puck out too to put you on the front foot, because teams sit back.
I understand that, but not all the time, because he mightn't get the chance to do that, Shane. You know what I mean? If you can keep pressure on the goalkeeper as well. If there's three inside in the full forward line, he won't be long getting rid of it. You know what I mean? Because if there's pressure put on him, they get rid of the ball. But some now, if they're pulling out their forwards, there's no pressure on the goalkeeper. So obviously he can look around and he can see where he's going to put the ball. You know what I mean? But like, if you have three inside in the full forward line, he don't have that much time to do that. You know, because they're going to go in on top of him, they're going to put pressure on him, and then maybe he put the ball out off the line. How many times you see the ball going out off the line from a puck out when a goalkeeper is under pressure? Because that's what he'll do, you know. And many scores have come from goalkeepers taking maybe short puck outs, giving it to a lad whose skill maybe wouldn't be the best. The next thing, the ball is in the net or it's over the bar. You know, I always believe have the ball at the other end of the field as often as you can, because you're going to do no damage to yourself when it's that into the field, you know. So
can I just ask you really quickly, Tony, would you have told Barry Hennessy much to do with his puck outs? And he's coming from a Limerick setup, obviously a very, very high end setup. Would you have said play it as you see it, or what would you, or would you said I want you to go long predominantly? Or
well, I would be going long with a lot of them. But I'd also say to Barry, look, if you're going short, maybe go short with the 60-yard one, you know, not the 20-yard one, really, because Barry is able to drive the ball at 100 yards, you know what I mean? You know, if his meters now and things like that, but he's able to do that. So why give it 20 and give it to the fella maybe that wouldn't even drive it as far as he could, or maybe be as accurate as he could, you know what I mean? So I'd always like to keep the ball away from the goal as often as I could, from our goals anyway. And, you know, Barry was brilliant at that, you know, but of course he has a good brain as well. But you were saying there about Waterford, you know, and their form this year. They only beat Laois and Antrim this year in hurling. They didn't beat any other team, I think, in the league, did they?
No, it drew with Dublin in the first round.
Drew with Dublin, and they beat Laois. Like, that's not a great form coming into the championship, really. You know what I mean? You know, so, you know, it's the hurling to me is, you know, you have your team, you prepare them as best you can for how many months, and I'm sure Waterford have been training for the last 4 or 5 months. You get them together for 4 or 5 months. But then again, of course, you know, when you cross the line, you have to do the business yourself, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're told to do something and it's not working, you say, geez, I had to change here, you know, because I'm not getting any ball or I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing myself. So you have to make up your own mind when you're on the field as well. So the Waterford players have to take a lot of responsibility here as well. You know, you can't be thrown in the towel, you know what I mean? You know, and they did that on Saturday, in fairness.
Would you have any concerns about Clare, Tony? Other than diving there by Rory Hayes, would you have any concerns about Clare?
I would be very worried about that kind of thing now. I would have no time for that kind of thing, fella diving and things like that. And Rory be better off to concentrate now and try and, if you see in the first half there, he went down over the ball, very lackadaisical, and Jamie Barron should have stuck the ball in the back of the net. You know, I'd be more interested in trying to get that thing right now, rather than being diving and fellas just maybe whistling going to pass you or something like that. You know, that is no place in the game for me now. That is no place. Now, Callum Lyons was unlucky, I thought, really. I just thought he was unlucky, you know. I mean, he'd do maybe what any of us would do, you know. When a fella gets it done, you go in and you kind of, you know, that's a spur of the moment thing. I just thought he was unlucky. You know. And obviously, then with the Ryan Taylor with the hurley and things like that, you know, I mean, okay, you'd say he should be booked for that, all right. But the first one, you know, to very trivial, I thought, you know what I mean, you know. So I just thought he was unlucky. I'd have preferred myself, personally, to see 15 Waterford players in the field. I would have preferred to see that. I always prefer to win games, you know, without any advantage. And it's the test of your team then, you know what I mean? You go out there. And, you know, it wasn't a test for Clare on Saturday, especially in the second half. But Clare were poor in the first half. Was that because of the break for the 2 weeks, Shane, you know? They didn't play since the Limerick game, you know, and obviously maybe a bit of training and things like that. Thought they were a bit rusty. But once, I think the Clare player that's really playing well this year is David McInerney. At wing back, I think he had a brilliant game at against Limerick.
Did you see the hang time in the air, Tony? In the first half? He caught a ball. He was hanging in the air about 10 seconds. I'd say.
Yeah, you know the one thing about Clare, apart from reasonably good hurlers as well, they're good athletes as well. You know, that was very athletic now what David McInerney did there. Tony Kelly is a fantastic athlete. You know, he's here one day and he's gone 40, 50, 60 meters in another second. You know what I mean? So they have good movement, but there's a lot to do, Shane. You know, there's no guarantees in this championship yet now. The only team out of this championship is Waterford. The other 4 are in it. You know what I mean? And look, it's going to be dog eat dog next week. Thurles, I believe, will be sold out. Innes will be sold out. You know, isn't that wonderful to see that? You know, that we have really looking forward to fantastic games next week. Like, I think there'll nearly be a bigger crowd from Limerick in Thurles on Sunday than there will be from Tipperary. Because, because like they're under pressure, and as you know, the Limerick support are fantastic as well, and they see now that they really need the support on Sunday. I think there'll be a massive crowd from Cork and Innis as well. We'll try and keep them out as much as we can, you know what I mean? If we could stop them at Bunratty, you know what I mean? But look, at the end of the day, it's great to look forward to two quality games that should be next Sunday, because we didn't have that quality last Saturday, so, and someone said that the 2 games on our RT next week as well, and next Sunday or something like that.
About time.
About time, yeah, about time, yeah. And I suppose at the end of the day, look at maybe that's, I was talking to a fellow the other night, and he was saying, I don't mind, he said, how I see it, as long as I see it. You know what I mean? Or who does it? You know what I mean? He said it's fantastic to be able to. I remember being involved years ago with Clare in the 90s. The Munster final was a deferred coverage at 6 o'clock in the evening.
Really? Deferred?
Yeah. Deferred. It wasn't showed live.
That's
you know what I mean?
sacrilege now. Of all the games now, to have a Munster final deferred is sacrilege.
Yeah, that was deferred to 6 o'clock in the evening, you know what I mean? So look, the lads were on the bus home, like having a few drinks and things like when it was being shown, you know what I mean? And I tell you, they had a good few. They had a good drinks, and there was no phones like you have now, Michael, that you could look at it, you know what I mean? So it was great, it was great then, because I suppose the fellas were trying to record it and things like that, with tapes, pushing them in, and sure, look, it was all over the place. But look, everything has moved on, and maybe hurling has moved on as well. But it's moved on maybe for the better in some of it too, But I like to see all these teams. We've only a few hurling teams, lads. There's only a few hurling teams. I like to see the Waterfords, the Offaly's, and all these coming up. You know what I mean? And I see Offaly on the under 20 final on Wednesday night, aren't they, against Wexford? So we need hurling counties to be strong. We need them to be strong because we need competition, and we're all from everywhere, and I want Clare to win no matter who we're playing. But you're the same, you're Offaly and Tipperary. But at the end of the day, the game is bigger than any of us, really. And we all love the game, love to see the game, and maybe we lag and fight about it, but we love the game, The game is just fantastic. And to see the colour that's being brought now, see the kids going to the games, it's fantastic. And it's great to see the players as well, giving their time to the youngsters after the matches, you know what I mean? And, signing autographs and lads excited and things like that. I took my own grandson out to Limerick, to the Limerick Clare match. Jeez, he was in a high, he went out onto the field and met the players. Whether they were Limerick or Clare, it didn't make any difference, but especially Clare, he's wearing his Clare colours, But at the end of the day, that's what's going to make young lads play hurling. We need them playing hurling. We need them given the right instructions as well. We need to give them to be role models for these young lads, because that's what it's all about, And a lot of young people, a lot of parents taking under 12s, under 10s around the clubs in the country and things like that. It's fantastic to see it. I think it's fantastic to see it,
And Tony, I can't help but think when you're talking about the bus home and you having the crack and all that, who was the best crack on that Clare bus?
Well, sure, I suppose the captain was kind of a bit of a leader, all right, you know what I mean? We had a few more characters there as well, you know what I mean? And PJ O'Connell now, the swagger of PJ, you probably see PJ playing like PJ was kind of the Georgie best of that whole team, you know what I mean? He had the 10 legs and the long hair, And he was the glamour boy, he was a bachelor. They were all bachelors at that time. I think they're all married now. They're only grandfathers now, some of them, you know what I mean? But they were great, you know what I mean? There was great characters around it, and they'd all given out song and things like that. And there was a great togetherness in the whole thing, there was a great togetherness. Brian now, Lohan, wouldn't be singing now and things like that, he was a real serious man about his hurling, Brian was thinking that the next day who would be on and who he'd be marking and things like that. But he was a great crack as well, when he got going, you know what I mean, And look, that's what it's all about. As I said to you before in this program, it's brilliant memories, But Daly, Anthony was a great old captain, and he was up for the crack at every opportunity, you know what I mean? Liked an old pint as well, you know what I mean? Like the old fry up before the old thing and the Sunday morning of the match as well, the old kind of kilty pudding, he'd have a bit of that and things, you know what I mean? Never worried too much about the diet at times and things like that. And I'll tell you one thing, lads, they weren't unfit either, I'll tell you. You know what I mean? They were well able to keep going for the 60, 70 minutes, you know what I mean? But it was great. It was great, it was fantastic. But that was the time then. It's different times now, Shane. You don't even know the players now, Shane. They're all helmets and things like that. You could play that time without a helmet, you know what I mean? They're all face guards, helmets and everything now. I think that's the one thing, I suppose, that's a bit of a drawback. I know health and safety has to come into it, but the players are not seen now, You know, you know, just lucky enough, maybe you'd be at the matches and you'd see the players, but there's some of them maybe you wouldn't know at all. You know, because until they take off the helmet, you don't see them in the field. Whereas that time, everyone knew the players. You know what I mean? They knew the lads. And I remember there when we played you in the '97 Munster final. You know what I mean, Shane, below in Cork, and we were going to the Imperial Hotel. I think Gerald Lucknan told this one time as well. You know, and Gerald said to me, "Jeez," he said, "the traffic, as you know, coming out of Cork is unbelievable." You know what I mean? So it's still unbelievable. I was there last Saturday night. It was unbelievable coming out of it. I wasn't home until 11:30. You know, but anyway. We said we'd walk up, you know, the bus went up to the Imperial Hotel. We said we went up the back way anyway. Just this fellow he was having a sandwich, of course, typical from Tipperary with these sandwiches and these flasks.
Fizzy orange, no?
Pardon?
Fizzy orange as well, maybe?
There was no fizzy orange. I'd say he had something fizzy, but it wasn't orange, I'd say he had, you know what I mean? You know? But anyway, we were passing out and he recognised Lucknan anyway, and he said, "Hi, Jerry." He said, "Come here." He said, "Come here." He said, "Come here." He said, "Sign that whole programme there." He said, "For the wife," you know what I mean? So, well, what's her name? I think it was Mary or something. Best luck, Mary Jella. "You don't know how much she fucking hates you," he said. You know what I mean? "I'll have a great crack and I go home," he said. You know what I mean? So that was the kind of thing it was that time. You know what I mean? You know, so of course, big laugh and things like that, and away we went. You know what I mean? But that's the way it was enjoyed too. You know what I mean? But they were brilliant days. They were, you know, and that's why I'm looking forward. Maybe I'd love if one of the games was played Saturday next week. I'd love to be at the two of them. I'd love to be at the Limerick Tip game. Obviously, I won't be at that one. I'll be at the Clare Cork game in Ennis. You know what I mean? So I'd love to be able to go to the two of them because I'm sure, you know, there is great crack at matches and there's great fun, but there's great hurling and great sportsmanship as well. You know, you have to admire fellas that are out there with hurlers, you know, and they're playing 70 minutes. You know what I mean? You rarely see a fella getting seriously injured in a hurling game. You know, from a snap of a hurley or anything like that. It's just wonderful to see it. It's completely our own, you know. It's completely our own. It's an Irish thing. No one give us this. We have it ourselves, and long may we have it. And the people coming after us, that they'll have it for a long time as well. Because people can give out about GA Go and give out about the GA, but look, it has survived so long. It has survived so long, and to be all there and we're all gone as well. Please God, you know what I mean?
But Tony, you only give out about something that you love, don't you? Really, because you
because you love it. Yeah. It's the same as giving out to the wife or something like that. You know what I mean? You know, or the husbands they give out to. You know what I mean?
And when you start not giving out at all, then you're in trouble.
Oh yeah, it's over. It's over. As the fella says, you know, this. He taught me, he was at the train there one day, and he see a husband and wife, and they were holding hands. He said they're in serious trouble. You know what I mean? You know, been married for 50 years and you're holding hands. You know what I mean?
Hey Tony, this time next week or this next Saturday, right? If Cork beat Clare, Limerick,
next Sunday.
Sorry, next Sunday. If Cork beat Clare, Tipperary can knock Limerick out of the championship. If Limerick lose either of their last two games, they're gone. We didn't expect that at the start of the year.
There was questions I would have about Limerick, and this is the only question I had, and we had a discussion about it before the championship started. I said, one thing that will come to Limerick is, will they have the hunger? You know, that is a huge thing now. Will they have the hunger? Because they're there for 6 years now, Shane. They have 4 All-Irelands won. You know, they have hurlers of the year. They have All-Stars. They have everything got. It's a question of hunger for Limerick now. It's a question of hunger. Maybe these 3 weeks that they have off will bring that hunger back. Maybe now they see, geez, this is dangerous, lads. You know, we're in trouble here. Maybe that will bring him on. Maybe it was a great thing for maybe that Clare beat him in the Gaelic grounds, you know, because they are under pressure going to Thurles, no doubt about that. They're under pressure going down to Thurles, but you'd have to say, you know, you'd have to still fancy him, you know, that they will put up. Now, Tipperary played well against Clare and Innis, but they could have been taken in Innis too, Shane. You were there at that game, you know. It was just mistakes by Clare that cost them on the day. So Tipperary could have been in trouble next week as well. You know, now people would say automatically, and I think this is the plus for Limerick, that Waterford are gone. Because even if Tip are under pressure next Sunday, they say, we will beat Waterford in Thurles, you know, and we will be through, maybe, if not in the Munster final, we'll be the third team. You know, so I think that's taken pressure off of Tipperary. All the pressure now is on Limerick. And we'll see what Limerick, we know what they're made of course. We'll see what they're made of next Sunday because there is real pressure. And of course, they will know the result in Ennis before they go out onto the field as well. So that's a huge plus for them. You know, if Cork happen to win in Ennis, you know, and Limerick happen to get beat, well, then we know who the 3 teams are coming out of Munster. You know, if Tip and Cork win next Sunday, the Munster final is between Tip and Cork. And Clare are 13. Pardon?
Wouldn't that be lovely?
Oh Jesus, we don't want to see that. You know what I mean? You know, as much and all now as you know, you'd see but I think if Clare, it's in their own hands next week, Clare and Limerick. If Clare and Limerick win their 2 games that's left, they're in the Munster final again. And I think everyone, you'd love to see that, lads.
Oh, yeah,
you'd love to see that again. You know what I mean? Because they have produced some classics now in the last 2 years, really. You know what I mean? So I think if them 2 teams can win next Sunday, I think you'd have a great Munster final again. You know, and I think you'd not only need the Phoenix Park, I'd say, to get the crowd. You know what I mean? Because everyone would be, you know, you could play it in Croke Park and fill it, I'd say. You know what I mean? You know, but. Look, that's the way it is. There's a lot to be played for yet. I don't think anyone is thinking like that. Any of these camps are thinking like that. I'm just thinking they're thinking about next Sunday. I'm sure Pat Ryan, Brian Lohan, Kylie and Liam Cahill, all they're thinking of is next Sunday's game, get over the line here, and we're still in the championship, because you could be out of the championship too as well, you know. So, look, it's all to play for. And isn't it great? Isn't it great? You know what I mean? That you'll be looking at the matches next Sunday and you're saying, Shane, you'll probably go to Thurles next Sunday, will you?
Yeah.
You won't come to Ennis, Shane, no?
I'm not welcome down there, I find.
Who give out you, Shane?
Clinch and the boys at Clare FM will be on my case. Well, they're very quiet. They were very quiet after the match the last day, but he had a lot of jawing on the way in.
Oh, they were jawing you, were they?
Yeah.
Well, you have all my sympathy, Shane. If we don't shut up, Shane, I'll start crying for you. You know what I mean? You know. But at the end of the day, Shane, wasn't it great to get John going in anyway? You know what I mean? But sure, look, you see that game, Shane. You know, it was a good game, but I thought Clare could have got something out of the game.
Yeah.
And that's not because I'm a Clare man. I'm saying that I thought they were in a good position to get something out. But still, I think they scored 3-23. Now, the big issue for Clare is next Sunday, I think, anyways, will David McInerney and Aidan McCarthy be okay? They'd be really massive losses. Like if we were missing now, we could do without it. We could do without Aidan McCarthy last Saturday. But I don't think you can do without him this Sunday. You know, you need every good player you have, especially a first 15 player, you need him, you know, and whatever subs coming on. I was impressed with Young Meehan when he came on as well, you know. So Clare have a reasonably good panel. Cork, I think, against Tipperary, I thought Tip could have won that game. They were in a winning position maybe twice in that game, but they still didn't win it. Cork are showing a bit of steel and a bit of character as well, you know. But like Ennis isn't an easy place to come to and win now, you know. But
unless you're Tip.
The last few years.
I wasn't going to say that now, Michael. You know what I mean? You know.
Well, like this, Tony, he was going to say it, so I said I'd say it.
Yeah, maybe it's better you said it, Michael. Yeah, maybe it's better you said it. But I just believe that Cork will come. You know, Pat Ryan will target this. If Pat Ryan gets a draw next Sunday, you know, he'd be happy enough, I'd say as well. You know, because they have Limerick in the last game. Now, you know, if Limerick win against Tip and Cork win into Limerick, that's a big ask. You know, so Cork will really be all out next Sunday to get something out of Ennis, you know. But, you know, I'm sure Brian Lohan will have the boys all out as well, you know. Ennis is a very hard place to play in, as you know. The crowd is completely up on top of you. I think it's a great venue. I think it's a great venue for a championship game. I'd also think, and I'd love if there was lights in Ennis. I think to be a great place for a Saturday night game, you know, a great atmosphere and things like that with the crowd that could be grinding there, you know. So, but obviously there isn't lights there now, but hopefully they will in time to come, you know. But hopefully, look, we'll get the games, lads, that we deserve next weekend, you know. And I know, Shane, you'll be very nervous below in Thurles, you know, and you know, Shane, is it possible to have a Clare Tip Munster final as well?
Wouldn't we love that now? Justice for 97, maybe.
Oh, you're still looking for justice for that,
Well, I'm down.
You got your chance of a justice to that a month afterwards, and you weren't there to take it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Hey,
no, look at it. Pardon?
When did Clare last win Munster?
98. 98
was
against Waterford. Yeah, that fateful day in Thurles. Yeah, that's the last time. Actually, Clare are the only team that hasn't won Munster in the last number of years. Really, they haven't won Munster in 25 years. Really, you know.
Breaks my heart.
I can see that you're crying. Even give him the tissues there. You know what I mean? But look, at the end of the day, look, it's just they have done well though. You know, they're competing, and I'm glad to, as a Clare man, I'm proud to say that you know, with minors and going to Limerick this evening to under 20s and things like that. It's great to see youngsters coming on as well. You know, that is the future of the game, and good management in places for the teams as well. You know, and it's great to see that they're doing great work. A lot of people are doing great work, and I think you know, especially I suppose the senior team are giving them all the lead where they're lifting all boats really. You know, and that's a good thing. And look at maybe they'll lift more on Sunday if they can get over Cork, but that's not going to be easy. That's going to be a really tough game now.
Can I ask you briefly about the 20s, Tony? Like, what do you think of the situation where Adam Hogan can't play in an under-20 final?
Just, it's absolutely crazy. Well, I hear fellas going on about things like other things about the games being on this GA Go or not being on live. That to me is more important than any other that rubbish they're talking about. You know, that we have an under-20 lad that can go out and play at his own level. Cathal O'Neill, you could say, maybe not playing for Limerick last year, could have cost Limerick the All-Ireland and himself an All-Ireland under-20 medal. You know, maybe that's maybe unfair in Kilkenny, but he'd be worth more than a point anyway if he was playing for Limerick, you know what I mean? And he wasn't allowed to play. I think it's the most ridiculous rule that was ever brought out. What's wrong with a lad playing in 7 days or 4 or 5 days? Young lads at 20 years of age, under 20. Adam Hogan will probably never get a chance again to win a Munster under 20 medal. You know what I mean? He can do, he'd be down there tonight maybe looking at it, he can play. It's crazy. I think it's crazy. I think they'll have to look at that. They'll have to re-look at it. You know what I mean? What do you think of it yourself?
Ridiculous.
Madness.
Isn't it? You know what I mean? You know, like he'd be your leading player, wouldn't he? You know, a senior player like under 20, you know, he'd coming off the senior team, he'd give the whole thing a lift. You know what
Tony,
I mean?
you're punishing your best players. I don't get it. You're punishing your best players. Like in what other sport do you punish the best players for being good enough?
I don't see anyone being punished for and it's all this burnout and things like that. That's the greatest load of rubbish of all time. What burnout? Look, you'll have fellas playing now, you know, from now until July. They'll go with their clubs then. They're then maybe into the Fitzgibbon, right? And they'll be playing all year round, won't they? You know what I mean? They'll have a full. Adam Hogan could be playing all year round now, and he still can't play under 20 with his county. And you know it's the same with Downey. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, and because it doesn't apply to the lower tiers, Charlie Mitchell of Offaly, he can technically play the Leinster under 20 final and the Joe McDonagh final on the same day next week.
That's crazy. That's crazy altogether. You know and you know he should be allowed to play. But sure, Adam Hogan should be allowed to play as well. If she's, what's the difference like? You know, they're still only 20 years of age. You know, I'm sure Adam Hogan would love to be in the Gaelic grounds tonight playing for Clare in an under-20 final against Cork. I'm sure, and everyone in Clare would love him to be there as well. And so would his teammates. You know, it's just, I mean, I think Ben O'Connor was completely against it there as well with Cork. I think his own Downey, he can't play either, I think. You know, it's crazy stuff. Absolutely crazy stuff. And who brought in this rule and who allowed it to be brought in is my big worry, you know. These things should be stopped. And if they're not stopped, they should get rid of them for next year. You know what I mean? It's the same as I was saying to you there about a young fella of 17, a county minor. He couldn't play senior for his club. No, that's ridiculous. I had that down in Kilmallock with Shane O'Brien. He was underage to play senior. I mean, often had the fella been overage, but the fella been underage to play. You know what I mean? It's crazy. He couldn't play senior. He couldn't be on the Kilmallock senior team when he was playing minor. When he was
probably bigger than half the seniors.
He was bigger than most of them. He was 6'2" and 14.5 stone. You know what I mean? So
I'll tell you a good one, Tony. Wexford have brought in a rule this year. Wexford have gone back to under 18 at club level. So because they've gone back to under 18 at club level, some of the best players that will be playing a Leinster under 20 final on Wednesday night cannot play senior club for their club basically because they've gone back to under 18. So like that, like it's grand. The bigger clubs will be fine. Some of the smaller clubs will be absolutely crippled. That's enough. I just don't know who does be. Do they talk to people or they talk to club people and realise the effects that they're going to have? I just think it's bonkers, really.
Well, there's no talking, Michael. There's no talking. Just the rule is brought in, put it in there, push it through, and that's it. And we don't worry about managers. We don't worry about players. We don't do anything like that because we're the people that's over this, really. You know, you wouldn't get it in Moscow, would you?
Hey, something is ringing a bell. Something is ringing a bell that Ollie Baker was not allowed or denied playing in an under-21 final. Am I wrong now?
That's a different ball game altogether now. Hold on there now. You're opening up there now. We were in an All-Ireland semi-final the week after, like, you know what I mean? And we were absolutely depending on a few lads. We'd only the 15 now, let's be honest, we'd be pushed with 16, you know what I mean? So we couldn't pick up injuries, you know what I mean? So actually that was a decision that was made, and it was made between the managements, teams that agreed that, we'd have the players for the senior team, because let's be honest, we weren't in Croke Park in about 80 years, 70 years. So we wanted to go up and do ourselves reasonable justice there as well, you know what I mean? So
the footballers were there 2 years before, though, Tony.
They were there in '92, yeah. That was good, but it's a different ball game, football, you know what I mean? Football and hurling, two different games, as you well know, you know what I mean? Although we have some of the tactics coming into hurling now from football.
Oh, yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think, understood what you're coming at there now, Michael, you know what I mean? But when you're in an All-Ireland semi-final, I think you have to put out your best team, especially if there's 3 or 4 of them. You just can't lose players, really.
I was having an old poke, Tony, to be honest.
I know you were, of course, yeah, but you're looking. That's why it was nice. Maybe we'd never have got a chance to beat Offaly if we didn't do that.
There you go. There might have been a reason behind my question,
You always get one in there, Michael. You know what I mean? But look, at the end of the day, I think it's probably a bit different now. I think it's hugely different now. The fella under 20. I think it was under 21 that time, Michael.
Yeah.
I think under 20 teams now playing that a lad can play in the Munster final because of the rule. There was a rule that's there now that he can play, even if he wants to play. They have this that the under 20 players can play, So I think someone will have to look at that and say, look, hey, let's get rid of that, Let's get rid of it, Now, the one thing they'd want to look at really is the burnout of players that's going to be playing for the full year. I maintain this, and this is my own view on it. I think the club championship should have been first rather than the inter-county. I agree with the split season. I was fully behind it. I think they done it the wrong way around. I think you should be only starting your inter-county. I mean, in All-Ireland, to me, over in July is crazy. It's crazy, you should. The All-Ireland should go on to September, really. You have top-class hurling. We all want to see top-class hurling, Now you have the All-Ireland be over in July. And you have no hurling inter-county hurling until next February again. I think if they played the club first, played it March, April, May, June, and then
how would you stop, Tony, the county managers running riot and taking players?
The same as you're stopping the under 20 players now from playing. Bring in the rule, and that's it. Haven't they stopping the under 20 players from playing now?
A little bit more difficult to police.
I know it would be more difficult, but the county boards should be in charge of that, really. Because let's be honest, the county boards are responsible for the team as well. They're responsible for the teams going on the field. So they should stop that. And any manager that's doing it well, he shouldn't be managing the county team then. It's as simple as that. I think it would make more sense to have the club championship March, April, May, maybe June, and have an All-Ireland club championship open. Forget about your provincials.
Yeah.
Right. I would agree with that. Would you agree with that, Shane?
Big time.
Right.
I don't agree in the order of which competition is played, but I agree get rid of the provincials and club.
Yeah, I think the provincials go. You could start your inter-county scene in June, the middle of June, into June. You'll have June, July, August. You could go to the end of September, and then you have your hurling over in September, and it should be finished then, Shane. Finish your hurling then, and have your few months off then until next January, February, and things like that. I think that would make more sense anyway. But look, I don't make decisions, but that's what I'd like to see. And I would be still nearly involved at club level if that was the way it was done. Because lads are going training now with clubs in February, and they have no championship match until September. You're playing maybe next November. The year is too long. You're fed up with one another at that stage. You know what I mean? Again, you get to play the championship. So it's way, way too long. I think they'd be better off just to do, as I said, start the club championship first. I know where you come from, Michael, as well. You say county managers would rule the roost to say we have to have our players in training. Make sure they don't have them. Wouldn't they be better off watching the lads playing club matches and see if they have they got material for the county team, and then be training away and hurling away. You know what I mean? Look, that's not going to happen anyway. So I'd say they should even give it a trial, maybe for 1 year. Just give it a trial to see how it would work. And a lot of people are giving out about the All-Ireland being too. I mean, we had championship in April, the first round of the championship was on in April this year. You know what's strange, Tony, is when you say, it used to always be, we'll be right come summer.
And
Yes.
a lot of teams are out nearly technically before we're even in summer. If you get me,
Of course, so Watford are gone. Watford are out now. Do you mean to tell me Watford will be training this week? I doubt it somehow. You know, they've nothing to play for. It is over, and they're gone in May. It's crazy. Like I just feel that it's maybe it'll work. They're getting crowds and things like that, but I think they should at least give it a trial for a year or 2 years and see how it would work. I think they'd work a lot better anyway. But for the club players.
Tony, you've been unreal with your time. But one final question before we let you go: who's winning Munster?
Well, I hope Clare can win it, and I would like to see. I suppose for the reasons of it being so good last year, I'd love to see a Clare Limerick Munster final again. Nothing against Tip and Cork or anything like that. No,
Tony, you have a load against Tip. Everybody does. Don't say you've nothing against Tip.
No, look at they're good for the sandwiches now. In fairness, I often get no sandwich off from going to the matches and things. You know, they're good that way. You know, I have a good offer. They often invite me for no game of golf and things like that. Mind you, I have to pay for it, and maybe pay for them as well. You know, don't you know the Tip crowd now? But anyway, look at the end of the day, it's open. You have to say, Tip have a great chance of being in the Munster final. You know, if Cork get beaten next Sunday, you know, you'll have to say that maybe if Clare and Limerick win next Sunday, you'd have to say it is nearly you'll put your life maybe on a Clare Limerick Munster final again. If that happens, you know, because if Clare win, they will be in the Munster final. It's as simple as that. It's up to Limerick then after that, you know. But Limerick have to beat Tip and Cork, and that's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. Tip will look at they're the least pressurised team, I think, next Sunday playing their game, and sometimes that can be a big help when the pressure isn't at its greatest. You know, you can go out and you can relax and play. You know, say you still have another game left, and you have the game at home, and you have it against a team that's gone out to the championship. I know Carl won't look at it that way, or I don't think any manager would look at it that way. You have to say, you know, that they're in a good position to be, if not in the Munster final, they're in a great position to be the third team going out of Munster.
Well, Tony, look, brilliant to have you on the show. Hopefully we'll do it all again soon. Yeah,
and lads, what you do for the day now? Are you working for the day now, or you just go back to bed again, or do you get up for an hour every day and things like that?
We're up since about 4 a.m. preparing this stuff.
Yeah, you must have wet. Come here, you must have wet the bed if you got up at 4 o'clock.
Yes, Tony. Tony, enjoyed the crack. A fitting point to end it on.
Listen to me. I hope we have a good weekend, the hurling lads. And you know, as I say, as long as Clare win, I don't mind about the rest of you, really.
Great stuff, Tony. All the best.
Well done, lad. Best of luck. Take care.
Cheers,
Bye-bye.
Tony.
Oh, he's unreal, isn't he?
I think that man needs to be up in a comedy club or something like that, to be honest with you. He's gas crack.
Mostly Slayton, Tipperary.
All right, sure, listen.
No, I enjoy that. That was brilliant stuff. Keep your comments coming in anyway. Geez, some of those stories about the crack with the Clare boys and all that kind of stuff, that was brilliant. But is there anything we haven't covered on that Clare Waterford game? Like, again, just for anyone who was hiding under a rock for the summer, 222 to 16 points. It was a beat down. Kilm Lions got sent off after a half an hour. Waterford had their chances, so many wides. Jamie Barron, I should say, had a goal chance early on.
We're a lot of wides from poor positions as well, though, Shane. Like lower percentage out the field shots. Like I that's why I don't kind of always, you know, a team could have 20 wides, but you know, were 10 of them good scoring chances, or were they wild shots? Do you know what I mean?
I think there was a bit of both. Like, they had some great score, and wasn't it the same against Limerick when the game was there to be won? Limerick were down to 14 men, and they're missing wides from crazy angles. But even so, are they able to manage a game in game correctly? In that Limerick had that we're down a man, and they're still running the ball out like we were talking about earlier, and emptying their own 45, and then the ball is turned over, and you know you're completely exposed at the back. The other thing too is teams are sitting well off Waterford because they realise their whole team is going to drift up the field, and you know, as a team defending, you want there to be nothing but traffic in your half of the field, and when you counter, for there to be nothing but space. And Waterford seems to be playing right into that. So when Waterford do run the ball out and the opposition drifts back, Waterford don't seem to have the composure to take that extra pass or two to try and take a good scoring attempt rather than shooting with a player running at full speed around the middle of the field. That's my take on it. I thought that's what happened against Limerick. I thought too often it happened the other day as well. But they missed great chances too, like Barron's scoring chance. It was so. And look, Deise Hutchinson, like, he's done serious damage on Rory Hayes in the last couple of years. I mean, Rory Hayes is a good defender, but sometimes he has trouble. And you don't put him in there on him. I mean, I don't get it.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of things. Now, listen, right, we've probably talked about the management and various things. I have to say, I find it mystifying as well that Owen Kelly, one of the greatest hurlers of all time, one of the greatest inside forwards of all time, is involved in a management team that doesn't play an inside line a lot of the time. I just find that very strange. But we've probably talked about the management a good bit. But there's probably
what's his role though? What's Peter Quealy's role? What's Donnacha O'Callaghan about? Do you know?
Well, Donnacha O'Callaghan was up in Dublin by all accounts doing TV coverage for the rugby at the same time as the game was going on, which would, you'd have to seriously question his role then as well. And maybe, listen, that was probably something maybe that was agreed beforehand or not. And it probably was, but I still don't think it's necessarily right because, the old saying of if you enlist your soldier, like regardless of what else is going on, if you're involved in a setup, even if they're playing against your own county, you just get on with it or whatever. But like, are we absolving the players of total blame here? Mostly the same players who were involved in Pádraig Fanning's year in 2019 that didn't end well.
Some of them don't look fit enough. Let's call a spade a spade. We're not going to call lads out in particular, but some of them don't look fit enough.
No, you're probably right, yeah. But it's the same players that underperformed in the latter stages of the Munster Championship last year. And you can say that was to do with the training or not. But it's the same players underperformed again this year as well. So I think they need to take a long hard look at themselves. And I'm not having a go at them or anything like that. It's just that's the facts of the matter, that potentially that's a common denominator, and maybe it's too easy to talk about what's going on the sideline or what way they're playing when it's generally been the same players that have been underperforming over the last couple of years.
Grode9 says Deise Hutchinson, unreal player and does serious damage, but fit the most part this year while he's inside. But for the most part this year, while he's been inside the service, has been shocking.
If they don't play the ball to him, it doesn't matter how good he is. He got a couple of balls the other day and was dangerous. Started the second half, but if you don't feed him, he won't score.
But also the way he strikes the ball, to me, he seems like someone who's very accurate normally inside the 45, but beyond, I don't really think that that's his striking range, especially because you have to move around at speed. And can I just read out this comment from TV Street? O'Callaghan is a performance coach, so hardly needed in real time, to be fair. But I'd love to know what that amounts to. What does that mean? And then, look, one other thing worth bringing up here is, I mean, can someone explain to me what this is about? Is it a breathing exercise or something like that? But like
they had one option for a puck up, that was Jack Prendergast. And when Tommy O'Connell and Rob Downey switched,
it's a strange one, Shane. Yeah, apparently it is some sort of breathing exercise. But
you don't need to do it in a circle like that. If everyone's doing a breathing thing, surely it can be less conspicuous.
Yeah, I'd be of that. Is it? KISS is what they say. Keep it simple, stupid. Keep it, keep it simple. There's no need to be complicating things. Like, it's clear that things are already complicated.
Everything is complicated.
You don't need to be complicated them more.
Is there anything simple about what they do? Does everything have to be complicated? It feels like everything is just like difficult for them. Like everything has to be, I don't know, just OTT. Is how it feels.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. I think there's just too much going on. To be honest with you, there's way too much going on. There's too much going on in the sideline. There's too much going on the pitch. There's too much thought gone into the whole thing. Again, like that could be a reason why there were 20 minutes in the dressing room at half time as well. Too much talk, too much thought. Like, I don't know, if you're a manager at that stage, you'd be given a couple of simple instructions. And that's what they generally say, 3 messages, and you let the players go out and do what they have to do out on the pitch.
And we mentioned it earlier, in the past we've kind of tried to give Davey plenty of credit, but you have to call a spade too. And we've definitely given him a platform to give his opinion a few times and asked him on a few other times. I mean, for me, we have to call it out and say that it's just, 3 wins in the last 16, 1 against Laois, 1 against Carlow, 1 against Kilkenny back in 2019, in his championship games going back to the start of 2019. It's just not good enough, and too often it feels like the same thing or a different version of the same thing. It's just frustrating to watch at this stage. Caleb Lyons, red card or not for you? As in 2 yellows?
I thought the first yellow was a bit mad. I thought David Fitzgerald went down soft enough. He was technically the third man in. He barely touched him. Genuinely, he barely touched him.
A replay wasn't shown. Certainly during the coverage. Maybe it was afterwards.
A tiny little shoulder into the chest. Now, I mean to say that it was more bumping off a lad, in my opinion. Should he have gone in? I see this whole third man in thing. It's not as if he was going in to incite a riot or anything. Do you know what I mean?
What was he going into to do? What was he trying to achieve?
I don't know. I just think one of his teammates was after being fouled. You go in and hit a lad like a small bit of a dunt. Like I don't think.
Look, I'm all for it, but like,
yeah,
there is the odd one where the third man in leads to a melee. You know, we saw against Cork and Kilkenny a while back. You know, we've seen it in a few games. So
potentially, like any little hoo-ha that started after was probably as a result of Caleb Lyons. But I would say this. It was as a result of David Fitzgerald hitting the ground when he's 6'4" and about 16 stone. It takes a fair dunt to put him to the ground, and that was not a fair dunt. And just on the Rory Hayes thing as well, again, we're not in the business of calling out players. I just hate seeing that type of thing. I hate seeing, like, you're essentially trying to get somebody punished for doing nothing, and I just hate to see it. And I think we're going to have to come up with some sort of I think, like, I'd have no issue with yellow card. I'd have no issue with a black card for someone if the referee thinks they're simulating. I don't like the black card generally, but that's the sort of thing that it needs to be cutting out. Cynical play, is that not cynical play as well, almost as well? I think it's as cynical as they come.
Comment in here, TV Street, third man in is a fella doing a lad that's unaware. That yellow was ridiculous. Paul Newtape, Watford are in a bad place now with Davy as manager. The players deserve better than this. This is Watford's golden generation. They've maybe 2 years left in them before most retire. Like, to be fair, like the underage success that they had, the time is supposed to be now with this Watford team. The same way that I think the time is now for this Clare team, because John Conlon's 34? He either is or is about to be 34. Tony Kelly's probably 29. He won Hurler of the Year in 2013, age 19. So he's 29 now, probably not too far off 30 as well. They really have to strike, because once the two of them are gotten, we saw the difference without Conlon last year in the All-Ireland semi-final. Now, that shouldn't have happened, but you know, the time is certainly now for them. Like Shane O'Donnell must be 28 now as well at this stage.
Yeah, 29, 20, yeah, 28, 29. He definitely is back to his best as well. I take Adrian's point here. What happened after Lyons came in, Verdi, mass brawl, that's the rule. Yeah, now I think David Fitzgerald hitting the ground had a big part to do in that as well. But yeah, I've no issue really with the second yellow. He kind of took out a man kind of going past him, and his hurl got caught up in him. I just don't like it, and I don't like lads feigning injury or whatever. It was a hat with like two. You know, I definitely thought the first yellow was soft. I'll put it to you that way.
Yeah. I agree with you broadly. Jason Ford's out for the rest of the Munster Championship, maybe 4 weeks or so. Do you think Tip can survive without him in the last couple of games? Tip need some sort of a result here.
Yeah, they definitely do. You'd be very, very surprised if they don't get a result out of the Waterford game, and all the finger wagging after the league game is for nothing really. Really now, Liam Cahill could be wagging his finger at full time, I'd say, because like as Tony said there, like what are the Waterford lads going to do over the next couple of weeks? Are they going to train? Or are they going to, like, what are they going, like, they're training?
They'll be going through the motions.
Yeah, they're training for essentially. I'd say the next 2 weeks is, in my head, I'm kind of thinking, is whether or not Davy's going to be there next year. I know he's talking strong about he's only there 5 months and he'll get it right or whatever, but by God, you're starting from a fairly low base. And I think the next 2 weeks will tell a lot about whether he's going to be there next year and what sort of performance they get. Do the players play for him? Do they buy in over the next couple of weeks?
Does anyone who's carrying any sort of an injury, do they line out in the next game? Are players in their heads already heading off to America on a J1 to hurl over in New York or Chicago or San Francisco or wherever? You know, there could be a bit of that too. Whereas Tipperary will be like ravenous animals, or they certainly should be for that match. The only thing is Tip might go into it a little bit complacent. And then do you remember a couple of years ago when Pádraig Fanning, in his final game, he completely gave the younger lads a chance, and they performed relatively well for long spells against Cork in that final game in 2019.
That's right, yeah. So, like, who knows? Depends. I don't know. It depends whether the manager thinks he's going to be there next year or not. By all accounts, his soundings after are that he's fairly confident that he's going to be there next year. I don't know, the Waterford public and the Waterford board could have something to say about that yet.
Okay, we'll go through some of the Joe McDonough. Kildare, they're after getting relegated back down to the Christie Ring. Down beat them 127 to 313. Pearse McCricker, he scored 15 points there, which is brilliant. And Kildare, they've had relegation or promotion for the last 6 years. We were kind of thinking maybe they could be upwardly mobile again this year, especially after how Naas had done in the Leinster Championship. But fair play to Down, Ronan Sheehan getting the job done there. And like, even if you look at Kildare's scoreline, 313, 2 of those goals came from penalties. So obviously they're in scoring position, so it's not like they're not creating. But God, the manner of it just not great for them.
No, I think we flagged it up fairly well in the previous show. They hadn't been putting up scores that were going to win games. Again, like it's down 127, 28 scores to 313, 16 scores. It should only be one winner in that instance. I was previewing the game for the paper and I was previewing, I think Kildare will come back and, bounce back or whatever. And then I'm kind of thinking, bounce back from what? They've had, a really, really bad Joe McDonough campaign. Ended up thinking that Down would win. I think I said it on the show as well, and they won pretty comprehensively. They had the two Sands brothers back. They'd been injured for most of the campaign. Pierce McCrickard ended up with 6 or 7 from play, I think, as well. Ended up winning fairly comprehensively. And from a Kildare, like if you take the third quarter of the Division 2A final against Offaly, you're thinking Kildare could be playing Division 1 hurling here next year, and then all of a sudden the wheels have completely come off. And that's up, down, up, down, up, down. That's really, really disappointing. And listen, they'll probably win the Christie Ring again next year, and they'll be back up Joe McDonough again. But it was so important. That's 2 years gone again for the likes of Brian Byrne, Jack Sheridan, etc. Not good. Especially with all the progress we thought they were making.
Yeah, and I'd love to know what the thoughts are. Like David Herty, I had him as coach as well, and he's really good. So I'd just be curious to get the thoughts of any Kildare hurling folk if they're watching. Adrian McGrath's biting back at me when I said the time is now for Clare. Shane, you're talking nonsense, sorry, Clare. We have top-class players coming into their prime, like Ryan Taylor, Dermot Ryan, Fitzgerald, McCarthy, backed up by young lads and 20s and minors behind that. That's fair enough, but I'm talking about a generational player in Tony Kelly that I don't think you've anyone comparable with him at the moment. And John Conlon is obviously a massive linchpin and leader. So talk about directly replacing those two and then tell me that the time isn't now.
Yeah, no, interesting comment. I'd be the same like John Conlon as well. It was an interesting interview with him last week. He won what did he get? Player of the Month or All-Star April or whatever. And he just talked about how he probably wouldn't still be playing had he not done his Cruciate, the session before Cruciate. He went off, and I think Colin Ryan kind of alluded to this. He went off and did a strength and conditioning course, did a personal training course. He couldn't get through training, he couldn't get through runs, and he was able to get his body back right. Sometimes it's amazing. Lads come back better from an injury, even with a potentially career-ending injury. And look at the shape he's in now. He said the reason for his back spasm in the lead up to the Kilkenny game was he was just trying to squeeze an extra gym session in, and it's amazing what can drive you over the top. And he said his back was always the part of his body to suffer when he was after doing too much, just spasmed. He missed that game, and obviously we saw the effects that his loss had been. But Clare definitely thereabouts, and they're one of these teams that can beat Limerick, like they have. Like they're big All-Ireland contenders. Will they take out Limerick? Could they potentially take out Limerick for someone else to exploit that, like Tip did in 2019, or will they be able? Like they're big All-Ireland contenders. You'd have to say they are.
Do you ever get a back spasm?
No, thank God.
It's no fun.
No.
In between the two Club All-Irelands 2018. We were just doing one of these drills where the way you often do that drill where you're 2v2 or 1v1, but like sometimes you'd be pucketed to hand, sometimes to feet, and then sometimes you'll smack it into the ground to bounce back up for the player. Whatever way I did that, I got a back spasm. Now, I don't think it was all that bad, but it was like a real stinging feeling, and you had to get all sorts of back manipulation. And, it was fine then when you warmed it up, but not nice. His must have been far worse than that. You've seen the likes of Richie Hogan suffer with them as well in these big games, but no fun whatsoever.
Your back controls everything.
Oh, your back is your back, and hurling.
Yeah. But like once you have a problem with your back, everything else is going to suffer. Your hamstrings, your glutes, everything. I think Aidan McCarthy's injury is a quad. And they're kind of saying he's kind of going to be touch and go for this weekend. He is crucial because he's just he's another option for Ireland. He's another different type of player, offers something different, and obviously, like he's a high percentage free taker too, probably a little bit higher than Tony Kelly, I'd have to say.
Yeah, very dynamic. Do you know, I saw this stat about, the way Arsenal have completely choked in the Premier League, and Man City are only a win away now after the latest terrible performance from Arsenal. They lost 3-0 at home to Brighton yesterday. They led for 93% of the season. Isn't that mental? And now they're not going to win the title. And I'm just wondering, relative to hurling, is it going to, look like teams are ahead of Limerick, and they can be for most of Munster, and all of a sudden they're going to go and Man City us?
If Limerick get to Croke Park to win the All-Ireland, is that simplistic? I
think there's probably more to it than that, because like if Clare get all the way to Croke Park as well, like Clare Limerick as an All-Ireland final would be unbelievable. Let's call a spade, and I'll, leave my allegiances aside or whatever. But that would be some All-Ireland final. Can you imagine 82,000 people all separated by a fag paper with how close the two counties are from each other, and the hurling they've produced in the last couple of years? I think it would be unbelievable.
Yeah, it'd be class, yeah. There's a distinct possibility that they could play in the Munster final and they could end up meeting in the All-Ireland final as well. But there's a fair amount of Limerick water to go under the bridge before then, and we'll preview it properly on Thursday. But Tip have some chance to basically knock them out, like, and I'm sure they will revel in that, and hopefully for the sake of the game and the sake of the championship, they'll raise it another 10 or 15% from the Cork game.
And speaking of for the sake of the championship, in the Joe McDonagh, Offaly made 11 or 12 changes against Carlow and basically threw the game, which means that both Laois and Kerry, now Laois hammered Kerry 423 to 21 points. But for the integrity of the competition, Offaly says, we've no interest in the integrity. Let's throw out the second team and let Carlow have a handy win, meaning we'll face them in the Joe McDonagh final. You're a disgrace there.
I don't think you really believe that. But
no, because I said that they should do exactly that. So I am joking.
The 3 or 4 injuries coming into the game, including Owen Cattle and Killian Kiley. If they'd been playing an All-Ireland final, would they have played? Yeah, they probably would have had, but they weren't playing an All-Ireland final. To me, there's a decent bit of commentary going around online about Offaly are disgrace or they didn't want to face Laois or anything like this. Offaly got themselves in a position where they could afford to do this. And they could afford to run their squad. Now, will Johnny Kelly be happy with what his second string and lads he was hoping might make an impact maybe in a Joe McDonagh final? Will he be happy with the impact they made? He won't be one bit happy. And
I'll tell you what he will be happy with, though. He'll be happy because this will have simplified his decisions for the last game. Because there'll be lads who are hegging on the sideline thinking, why aren't I getting a chance? They've had their chance now. And I'm sure maybe 1 or 2 lads did all right or whatever. So maybe Johnny would be feeling good about that I can throw a lad out. He performed really well when we got hammered against Carlow. But for the most part, it simplifies his decisions.
Yeah, no, fair point. Ben Keneally, who's obviously a guaranteed starter anyway, he was very, very good. I think he was on John Michael Nolan and kept him quiet enough. And Shane Doody at the other end got 3 from play, probably showing better form maybe than he had earlier on in the competition. So he's an option potentially off the bench. He will be disappointed with the others, but as you say, it probably does simplify his decision a bit. There was some kind of whinging and cribbing about, Willie Matter said, and we've had Willie on the show and a great time for Willie, but Willie said in the aftermath that that it was disappointing what Offaly did, and that if Laois had been in the same position, that's not what he would have done. Don't think you can really say that unless you're in that position. If Offaly are through to the final, it's a nothing game. Would you not? Of course you'd rest a couple of lads. Of course you'd run your panel. Of course you would. I
can't blame him for saying it, but I think an awful lot of us would have done the same as what Johnny Kelly did. So I'd have no qualms at all.
One thing saying it, you could say something, but if you don't believe it, I wouldn't be saying it. Just interesting. Niall Rigney, obviously Laois legend, who we had on the show, and a great hurling man, just said, well, we could have done the same if Laois had beaten Offaly, which we didn't. We could have done the same if Laois had beaten Carlow. He kept emphasising the had, which we didn't. So go and blame another team, county, for not qualifying and not your own performance is questionable. I'd have to say, listen, Willie's not making excuses. It's just raw after the game. You're disappointed. Do you know they are? And you would have loved if Offaly put out the best team or whatever, but that's realistically, Offaly got themselves in that position that they could afford to do that. Laois got themselves in a position where they were relying on others, and that's not a good position to be in. Laois had a right good win against Kerry, put 423 up, on their travels. A brilliant tally to put up. But when you're relying on others, you're under pressure. Never rely on others. Never rely on people.
Yeah, well, they were 6 or 7 ahead on Carlow, so they really should have seen that one out, and then they would have been in control.
That's the game, Shane. That is the game. That's the killer. That they had that game in their hands, and Marty Kavanagh got a penalty to draw it at the end. That's the game that cost them realistically. Yeah,
Adrian McGrath's coming back at me once more. Turn it back on you, Shane. Conlon is the only Clare player that won't be available for selection in 2 to 3 years. I bet Clare are younger than Tip, for example, with better 20s and minors behind. Right, fair point, but I still, it still remains the point that he's a generational player that you have. And Tony Kelly is still one of the top performers in Ireland, and he might be available in 2 or 3 years. But will he be as good then as he is now? If you're to look at the general player, they've kind of hit their peak and are possibly on the downturn by the time they reach 30. These days, players are probably reaching their peak at about 28.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. Just on like the likes of Dermot Ryan, Rory Hayes, Ed McCarthy, like they're all like early 20s. They are actually probably younger than, they're probably similar ages to like some Mark Keogh and a few more who are just kind of breaking through onto the tip team now. So we're probably, but like Conlon and Kelly are probably two generational players, and as well as that, you have a team built around your six, like in Conlon, and he will go in the next couple of years, and they're going to have to find another six. Is there a natural replacement for him? I don't know if there is, and a natural replacement rarely comes at number 6 as well. It usually takes a couple of years to bed in. But take his point.
And to be fair, Clare do have an awful lot of very talented young players, so it's not like I'm saying they won't be in the mix. They will be in the mix, but it could be a case of the time is nigh. Because look at how many teams look like they're building towards an All Ireland. It goes a year too far, and it never happens. Waterford maybe be the perfect example. Just in terms of who did the scoring for Carlow, Marty Kavanagh, he scored 14.6 of those from play. Chris Nolan hit 5. Conor Keogh won 1, and James Doyle hit 3 points. Shane Dooley scored 7 points. On the road since 2007, yeah?
Yeah, he came in the same year as I did, 2007. I think Derek McNicholas is still the longest serving player. I think he debuted in 2004. 20 seasons. Some gone, isn't it? Some gone.
Yeah, Barry Fitzpatrick, could TJ last, or TK last like TJ in terms of Tony Kelly? Could do. I mean, you could see a position, like even if he slows down a yard, he's still going to be faster than more players.
Yeah, as long as he still has the speed in the mind, and he's going to have a lot of speedy players around him. He's still going to be he could be a good foil in a couple of years as well. I'd say he'll last a good while. Saying that, he's had a good few different ankle injuries and stuff in the last couple of years as well, which maybe is a bit of a worry. Just Shane, we're talking about Carlow there. They're obviously in the Joe McDonagh Cup final. Really tough game to call. We'll get to that in a couple of weeks or whatever. Really, really tough game to call. Carlow have been a different team come Joe McDonagh as well. But one of their greatest ever, if not their greatest ever players, was honoured in the Leinster Hall of Fame yesterday. Johnny Nevin. Wait to hear these numbers. 177 competitive appearances for the Carlow senior footballers. 155 competitive appearances for the hurlers. So that's a combined of 332 competitive appearances for your county. Like, we'll never get the colour of that again, will we? Like, that will never be seen at senior county level. Like, you do well to get, if you got to 200 in one code, you'd be doing unreal. To get to that many, 332 across 2 codes, that will never be achieved again. It's outrageous.
Over how many years?
I'm not 100% sure over how many years. It's on my Twitter though. I think how long he played. It's including Walsh Cup, O'Byrne Cup, League, and Championship, I think, and maybe if there was some other like Oireachtas or different competitions that were going around back then. But like it's a savage innings, unbelievable innings.
Yeah, congratulations to him. That is unbelievable going. And just in terms of Kerry, their season is over, obviously, as well. As we said, 423 to Laois, 21 points for Kerry. And Stephen Mullumphey, the manager, was talking about being stronger this year. He says, if you look at the condition of the players, even what they're doing, they're creating goal chances. Every year, everyone is getting better. Everyone is getting stronger. I'd be a lot happier this year. If you played this year's team against last year's team, I think this year would win, even just with the impact of the subs that's come on. One of the two key games, the draw against Carlow, but one of two key games, the draw against Carlow, but I keep saying it's such a ruthless competition to Joe McDonagh, and it is. So then the Christy Ring, Meath 28 points, Tyrone 20, Sligo 226, Mayo 123, and London 419, Derry 130. Jesus, that's some high scoring game between Derry and London, with Derry coming out on top by 2.
Yeah, that was over in Ruislip as well. I'm just going to check, Shane, while I'm chatting to you. You might go through the Nicky record. I just want to check exactly what sort of an effect that has on the table. I think there's still one round of games left, but like London had been the ones that were flying, so that Derry result has probably upset the apple cart a bit for them.
Yeah, so Nicky record results then: Fermanagh 217, Armagh 218, so very tight there. Donegal, I should say, 219, Louth 47, so that's Donegal on top there, and Wicklow 523, Roscommon 211. I just might as well read the Laurie Maher one.
I have the Christy Ring here. So Meath are on 6 points after 4 games. They're tied with Sligo on 6. Derry now have 5. London now have 4. And the last round of games will see Tyrone against London. So London would be expected to get a win there and potentially end up on 6 points, but they're under pressure. Derry are playing Mayo. Derry are on 5. Mayo are relegated back to the Nicky Rackard, and Sligo play Meath. So you could see a scenario there where the draw would probably maybe suit both of them, maybe. No, Derry will end up on 7. It's messy anyway. We'll get into it on Thursday show, but it's going to be a messy enough finale with probably 4 teams in the running. But real disappointed from a Mayo side who were in the Christy Ring Cup final last year to be relegated back to Nicky Rackard again.
Okay says, lads, if you're picking an all-star team today, who goes in midfield with Alan Tynan? Seems games are passing midfielders by these days.
Ryan Taylor.
He's brilliant, isn't he? And he often wears number 11, or did he wear even 13 the other day? People sometimes mightn't even consider him a midfielder, but like he was an all-star there last year for me.
Kyle Malone was brilliant the other day as well. That was one of his best games in a while. He even got through for the goal. We probably didn't talk about it enough as well, but Davy Fitzgerald's hands for the Ian Galvin goal. He touched the ball down beautifully into space, and the defenders were converging and just gave a little hand pass. He didn't actually take the ball in his hand. He rose it and gave the hand pass straight away, and Galvin finished it really well. There was some. It wasn't a great game, but there were some beautiful little instances of brilliant skill throughout the game.
I was actually thinking of the second goal, the little flick behind himself. Was that also David Fitzgerald? Did he set up both goals?
No, Duggan set up that one, but David Fitzgerald nearly got one of the greatest goals of all time, where he flicked the ball over the keeper and just hit the butt of the post. That would have been, because that's just not something you see generally in hurling, and particularly with the range you have with a hurl, it's not something you try usually put it over a lad's head, but pity that didn't go in. That would have been one of the great goals.
Mickey taking kind of goal in a way.
Maybe either that, or he thought he was going to get creamed and thought he needed to flick it before he got creamed. Because maybe he would have went to the ground handy enough if he got creamed as well. That was probably unnecessary now, in fairness, and I apologise, David.
Yeah, Longford 215, Cavan 21 in the Laurie Maher, Warwickshire 215, Leitrim with the win, having put up 217, and then Lancashire 318, Monaghan 519. Also, the Leinster Minor Hurling Championship final, Kilkenny 220. Galway 14, Aaron Nyland scored.
Other way around.
Sorry. So Aaron Nyland with 11 points there. So what a player he is. We've already kind of touched on it with Tony Considine that the Munster Under-20 final is on tonight. There's also the Leinster Under-20 final, Offaly and Wexford to look forward to. Are you excited about that?
Yeah, can't wait for it going down. There's a good cohort going down to Carlow. I kind of thought I think it's kind of even money each two. It's hard to kind of say who's favourite. I would have thought that we should be marginal favourites. Then I was chatting to a few lads from Wexford last night, and they're convinced that this is the best team that they've had in a long, long time. Who's involved? Even the management team: Rossiter, Rory Jacob, Aina Martin as well. And by all accounts, they seem to think they have 6 forwards that are as good as anything in the country, probably led by Corey Byrne-Dunbar. So yeah, this should be a belter of a game. 2 teams that play relatively orthodox, probably be a high-scoring game. It'd be a massive bonus for either of the two to win this and get their hands on Leinster silver and then go straight through to an All-Ireland final against either Cork or Clare. Like the boost for winning here, I can finish the title huge, but you're not going into a quarter-final or semi-final. You're going straight into an All-Ireland final. Be savage for either county, yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at it there, the Wexford team that won the Leinster final, I should say, against Kilkenny. Or sorry, the Leinster semi-final against Kilkenny. And a lot of the lads who were on the freshers the last couple of years in UCD with me, and they're not even on it. So I'm just thinking it must be a very strong team if that's the case. Let's talk about the row over the Tailteann Cup. Like Donloe Cusack said, the GA schedule has 2 provincial football finals and the start of the Tailteann Cup, which if you haven't heard of it, is a sort of a Gaelic football Grand National for disappointed also-rans. There's a bit of a shock jockey element to this and a lot of what's been said by Donloe lately, I would have said. And the notion now that someone who's the head of the GPA, which is supposed to look after all players, can denigrate a competition that half of the Gaelic footballers at this, kind of stage of the season, inter-county level, it's almost taking the mick out of all these players who are supposed to be looked after by the head of the GPA.
Yeah, I'm wondering what other people within the GPA think of these comments. Because, basically, you're denigrating half of your Gaelic football senior players' population, aren't you, really? And then, as well as that, I know he's a hurling man, but, what does he think of the Joe McDonough? What does he think of the Christy Ring? What does he think of the Rackard and Mar competitions as well? Are they also a Grand National for all?
Or what about the Joe McDonough teams being plugged into the All-Ireland preliminary quarterfinals? Is that is that a piss take as well?
Yeah, so, they're kind of from someone heavily involved in the player's body, who's been involved in it probably for the goods of about 2 decades, there, I would say, are worrying comments. I have to say, from Colin O'Rourke's point of view, I just loved the way he didn't actually refer to Donal Logue by name when he was in someone asked him, obviously, Donal Cusack said this, what do you think? And he just said, that the gentleman involved, I wouldn't pass the slightest remark on what he'd say about anything. They were both Sunday Game pundits together, obviously, for years. So I didn't find it in any way insulting. I thought it was a reflection of him rather than anything else. I think I'd probably just leave it. I'd probably just leave that there, to be honest with you, because I think that sums it up pretty well.
Yeah, Pao K says, thought that was disrespectful, lads, from a fella whose opinion I value. County teams are crying out for competitive, meaningful games in an era where provincial football cups are uncontested. It's Traumspieler says, it's hilarious how the ex-Sunday Game lads are turning on each other. Colin O'Rourke said that he would pay no heed to cues of Kieran Whelan and constantly picking up on McStay and O'Rourke on RTE. So let's talk about then the provincial finals that happened over the weekend. And we'll start off with the Leinster one. So it was Dublin 5-21, Louth 15. In terms of the score, and Sean Bugler, who won man of the match, he had 1-3. Cormac Costello had 5. Paul Mannion 1-1. Conor Callahan had 5 points. And then James McCarthy, Paddy Small, and Colin Baskell, they got a goal apiece. And I actually thought that the Sean Bugler one clipped off Paddy Small's heel, but there was no conclusive clip to prove it anyway. So I actually think Paddy Small possibly got 2 goals there. On the other side, Sam Mulroy scored 7 frees, 145 and 2 from play. Conor Grimes scored 2 and a few other lads got a point.
It's a Grimesome tank as well. The man suit. Do
you remember a few years ago when he used to have really long blonde hair like Mr. Perfect from the WWF wrestling days?
That's brilliant. Yeah. He did back in the day, all right, yeah. I think he has a fermentation business, would you believe, actually? That's what he's involved in, I think, yeah. Funny enough, I was at the Carlow game, and I go back to the Leinster final there, but the centre-back, Mark Fury, which I just thought was a great name as well, because there was a Johnny Fury in goals, like as in John Fury, Tyson's father. But Mark Fury was a world karate champion, and he was playing centre back for Carlow yesterday. But I digress.
Did you ever hear John Fury, the boxer, in Tyson Fury's father? Have you ever heard him in interviews?
Yeah.
My God, it's raw. When he talks about his partying days, there's one interview in particular.
I listened to it. Someone sent it on to me. It's raw. He is true to himself. I'll put it to you that way.
And he's not interested in a particular metal called copper. He's interested in another metal called... anyone who's seen it knows exactly what I'm talking about. But Dublin beating Louth. I mean, Louth had gotten to the provincial final, not exactly pulling up trees in terms of who they beat, performing really well. But it's not like they'd beaten a load of Division 1 teams on the way. I don't think anyone expected the margin of victory to be quite like this. Like 5-20, like 21-point hammering, really. It was tough to watch for a finish. But this was Dublin's most complete performance in a long time. And all of a sudden you're starting to think, well, they've looked flawed in the last couple of years. They still are a little bit flawed because we've seen it against Kildare and sometimes in the league. But they're just starting to pick up a little bit of speed now all of a sudden as they head into the All-Ireland series.
Starting to pick up speed when they need to, realistically, aren't they? Speaking of picking up speed, I wonder what's the nature of Jack McCaffrey coming off, or how bad is that as well? He's too fast. That's the problem. He's actually too fast, and he's probably doing himself harm by his own pace. But that's the report on the OurGame website there as well. It's just, yeah, the Dubs are definitely look like they're coming to the boil when it really matters. To me, they were always going to win Leinster. That's obviously their 13th Leinster title in a row, but it's all about winning All-Ireland for them. And signs suggest that things are starting to pick up now with Sam Maguire in sight.
Yeah, and like they've so many free-flowing forwards, really. And like when you've got Conor Callahan, Paul Mannion, and we've kind of named some of the others, Cormac Costello and so on, and James McCarthy still flying around, and Kieran Kilkenny, and hopefully Jack McCaffrey's injury isn't that serious. They're obviously going to have a threat all the time. Colin Baskell came in late on, and he looked mad for goal. He helped set up one opportunity that Dean Rock fisted over the bar, and then he scored a beauty himself at the end. But 5-13 of 5-21 came from play. Like it was so one-sided. It was kind of beyond belief, and it's like it is a tough one for Mickey Hart. Obviously, he's got out with the best of intentions, but they got absolutely cleaned out in their own kick out, and they kept going long, and it kept not working, and they kept going long some more, and ultimately they were just countered time after time and couldn't get out of their own area.
It's funny, Shane, you had heard, as I had, of Dublin playing a challenge game against Antrim 2 days after the Kildare game, and that they went 4-4-4, as in the most aggressive press in the history of Gaelic football. And they kind of did that real aggressive press the other yesterday as well at times. And Louth just couldn't get their hands on the ball. And it's kind of amazing to see, really, because it's just a team so stifled. But the Louth lads obviously didn't hear what we had heard about that challenge game against Antrim and that, because they maybe would have been a bit more forewarned had they.
Yeah, I mean, the first half, it was 1-8 from play to 3 points. I mean, the overall scoring was 112-6. And to be fair to Louth, they, after going 112-3 behind, and this is with Dublin scoring 110 in a row, during which time Louth didn't even have a shot. They made a bit of a burst. They scored 5 points in a row either side of half time. And, you know, to be fair to them, that was making a fair old burst. But they were just so wide open at the back. And I think, unfortunately, they haven't been playing at the top level of championship for, you know, in terms of like big games over the years, whereas Dublin have. And even though they both played Division 2, maybe Dublin were just sort of going through the gears before the championship. But you can't ignore some of the frailties that Dublin showed. Stephen Cluxon was out of action for 2 years. Half his kickouts in the first half didn't go to Dublin men, didn't finish up with Dublin men. And he's going to come up against tougher competition as the season goes on. Like, we know in their group, it's not going to be overly difficult, just in terms of who they have in their group. And just, I know that Louth have Cork, Kerry and Mayo. Who is it that Dublin have again? I don't
not off the top of my head do I have it, but the thing about Cluxon is I don't know. I'd probably
Isn't it Kildare, West? I'll look it up.
I'd kind of be happy that Cluxon had a bit of a malfunction at this stage, maybe, rather than later on. Do you know what I mean? You ever playing and sometimes things are going too well and you almost need a bit of a kick in the backside almost? So I don't think that was a bad time for it to happen. Louth didn't exactly make hay. They had a bit of a revival before half time as a result of it. But yeah, I actually don't think that's a bad thing for it to happen at this stage. Much better happen at this stage than happen in a big knockout game, a semi-final or final. And I definitely think they'll stick with them as well.
Yeah, it's Roscommon, Kildare and Sligo that they have in the group, so they're going to walk through that.
Yeah. That, like, you'd imagine they'd win their third or fourth gear, or they'd win the 3 games in third or fourth gear there, you'd have to say. But even like Deise Farrell is talking after about whether it's time to scrap the provincial competitions or not. He just said, the GA won't need me to tell them this. For years, I've been banging that particular drum. Look, I get it. It's quite political. Provincial councils have been established a long time and feel that they have a role and responsibility and that their contribution is important to the GA. While that is definitely the case, I think it's probably time to have a proper review of the competition and see what does benefit these big wins, the big discrepancies between teams. Is there a better mixture? Like, if Louth are the second best team in Leinster, that's very, very worrying. And they are, because they got to the Leinster final and they were third place in Division 2. That's very, very worrying for the Leinster Championship. Like, the Leinster Championship is a non-entity really in that case.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose the other game then, Derry, they became the Orchard Thieves as I was looking at it after their shootout win 3-1.
I'd say you've had a few of them back in, I'd say you've had a few flaggings of that back in the day.
Indeed, I have, of course. But like, do you know the way Derry started this game? They looked like they were on fire. Brendan Rodgers had 1-2 on the board early, and it was starting to look like she's putting Ethan Rafferty, obviously a converted forward/midfielder, into goals. Was going to backfire because, you know, he came out for that high ball. I think Derry had 2 shots in a row. Conor Doherty, his was blocked down. Then Paul Cassidy put an absolute bomb up in the air that dropped short around 10 or 12 yards out. Rafferty came, went back, and it only took a little nudge of a punch from Brendan Rodgers for the ball to end up in the net. And you're thinking, geez, this is the goalkeeping frailties coming because he's not a natural goalkeeper. But to be fair to Armagh, they spent the whole game trying to chase down Derry, and they didn't get level until late on. And the first time they led was in the first minute of extra time. And this is when Derry were obviously down a man because of the black card to the same man, Rodgers, and his late foul allowed Armagh to score a free through Rian O'Neill, send it to extra time. But
you nearly got tongue-tied there. There's that much going on, isn't it? It was crazy stuff.
Yeah, it really was. And like, did Armagh suffer for not pressing on when they still had that man advantage and the point advantage that they kind of let Derry kill time? Or is it just easy for us to say it here?
That's probably easier for us to say it here. In fairness, I saw a quote that you pulled out of Tipcast last week. What is it? Hindsight is the foresight of a gobshite. Was that what it was? Well, basically, Mickey Hart said after Leinster final that it's easy to be watching from afar and saying we should have done X, Y, and Z. And it's, you know, it is obviously when you're in the arena, it's different. It's probably the same for Armagh as well. But when they got 2 up, you're kind of thinking they might just have this, and then they just let Derry back in. And in fairness to Derry, they show great resolve.
I mean, like in terms of the penalties, are you liking it? Some people are furious with it, but I just say, like, when you go to the end of extra time or end of normal time and it's a replay after a brilliant game, you're just letting the air out of the balloon. This will be remembered because it came to its most dramatic conclusion. And you might say, oh, it's harsh on players, they've missed penalties, so on and so forth. But like, players get red carded. Like, Calum Lyons had to have the camera on him as he walked off the pitch and Waterford ended up losing the game. How's that any less harsh than a lad missing a penalty in a shootout?
Yeah, I just thought I don't like him for finals. That's all. I've no problem with an All-Ireland quarter-final or semi-final or anything. I just don't like him for finals because I don't think there's a mad rush on playing games or whatever, and they could have just met again next week.
But to me, it's about the rush. It's about taking the drama out of the situation. Like, it was thrilling because they kept going.
Yeah, okay. I just don't like the harshness of it.
What's harsh about it? There's winners and losers in life.
Yeah, obviously. But you've lost an
The losers
final.
are awfully.
Yeah, we'll see on Wednesday night. What was I going to say as well? Like, I thought it was interesting. I saw an interview with Brendan Rodgers after, and I hadn't really thought too much about it. But it's weird to say that you can have no impact in the winning of the game, if you get me, that he's just standing looking at penalties been taken, whereas he's gone up and down the field for 95 minutes before that. It's just, I don't know. I wouldn't be a big fan of it, and obviously Armagh probably aren't big fans of it now at this stage. I agree with you on the drama point of view, and obviously they go back to the World Cup final. Like, there's probably never been a more dramatic finale to any sporting event than that. If they played again the next week or 3 days later, it probably wouldn't have been the same or whatever. But I just think it's mad, to be honest with you. But listen, it's done now. Neither team would have wanted to play a replay anyway. That's the last thing they would have wanted going into the All-Ireland stages. So it probably was right to finish it on that day. Would it be right for an All-Ireland final to be finished on penalties? If you were a losing player who didn't take a penalty and you had no impact on it, I'd be pulling my hair out, whatever I have left of it anyway.
You've plenty of it left. But like, I don't like the idea that once the 5 penalties are taken from each side, if it hasn't been decided, it goes back to the same 5 players. I really don't like that.
Go down through, bring out the dregs, bring out the ones that don't want to take it. But I can understand in a way why they're not doing that. But it is a bit mad, and it's also bringing up the possibility of, just say if Rian O'Neill had to take another penalty, and just say he missed another penalty. Like, Jesus, that would have been. It was interesting actually, Shane, as well, and we go into it in a minute. I was down in Auckram where Rian O'Neill's uncle, Oisin McConville, was on the line for Carlow. Now, I don't know if they lost obviously by a point, and I don't know if he knew that the Ulster final had gone to extra time, but he made a fairly swift exit out of the place after anyway, and he said to the Wicklow lads that he chatted to them on Tuesday night. So I don't know if he went and watched the Ulster final, or he was just tick over the match and drove home. But 2 heartbreaking defeats and heartbreaking circumstances within fairly quick succession.
Leonard Tobin says, flip side, Shane, if it's a good game, I'd love to see another 70 minutes of it.
Of the actual game, yeah. I'd be more along that lines as well.
Are replays generally as good as the first game?
Come on. The 2014 All-Ireland final replay, I'm thinking, wasn't as
rubbish.
Good as it wasn't as good. Well, he lost, obviously. So
2012 All-Ireland final, rubbish, Galway, Kilkenny.
The replay was a bit of a no-show as well. Offaly Clare 98 replay, brilliant. Second replay, better again.
Yeah, year some sucks down there in Offaly. Peg Leg Lonergan says, hindsight is the foresight of a gobshite. Is that not what you do for a living?
I don't think we
preempt as well.
Yeah, I don't think we go about hindsight. I think we call it as we see it. There probably is a little bit of hindsight in there as well.
Yeah, to be fair, there's a few people saying here that the Cork-Clare replay in 2013 was one of the great finals, and it was, to be fair. So other than that, I mean, brilliant win for Derry. They're back into the All-Ireland group stages, as are Armagh, of course, as well. And those should be some excellent groups.
Armagh going to play Galway in a couple of weeks now. It's going to be a fair, tough start to that campaign for them.
Yeah, and then they've Tyrone and Westmeath, whereas Derry will face Clare, Monaghan and Donegal, which...
It's amazing, Shane, the scheduling, like, with due respect to Westmeath. If they'd had Westmeath first, they maybe have a chance to get back on the horse. Whereas now, they're fairly low. I'd imagine they supped some porter last night and maybe even today as well. And they'll try and get back on the horse in a couple of days. But, like, Pádraig Joyce was up there watching the game. they're in a totally different position. Do you know what I mean? Galway are kind of flying high at the moment, whereas Armagh are probably down their boots anyway at the moment, so they're going to have to lift it.
And any of those teams who've had an extra week, or in the case
Sorry,
of the
Shane. No, as well. Someone has up the Dublin Mead Epics from '91 as well. You got me on the spot there about replays. I had not been prepared. There have been loads of brilliant replays. And listen,
and loads of rubbish ones. Bit of both.
Probably as well. The Dublin Mead saga, that saved the GA financially at the time as well, by all accounts.
And also it saved it from the huge wave of soccerdom after the World Cup. But how many times has it come to full time of a brilliant game and everyone's gone, there's no extra time, or it's ended there? I think that happens every single time.
That was such a Cork accent. You're like, oh boy.
Oh, I'm fled. Imagine we didn't get the Tip Limerick trilogy in 07. Leave them all at it again. To be fair, they weren't bad. Who do you think will win the Mayo-Kerry match, says Pádraig O'Malley? That's a really tough one to call, because we don't really have any form lines for either team, because Kerry was through Munster. It's not in any way difficult for them. And we just haven't seen Mayo in so long at this stage.
Yeah, that makes it probably even more fascinating, doesn't it? Because you're really going into the unknown. If they play another semi-final or final, you have a fair idea. You've like really recent form to go on, as in, probably a fortnight before that. You have nothing to go on. That'll be wedged down in Killarney, won't it? Jesus, that'll be the game of that weekend, realistically. I think it's on GA Go as well, actually. But that'll be the game of that weekend.
Did we kind of mentioned already about Rory Gallagher stepping back as Derry senior football manager, and his estranged wife had a front page piece on the Sunday Indo yesterday as well, and I think maybe that was part of the reason that he stepped back. Maybe he knew that was coming. I'm guessing that that was Friday night that was decided, and maybe it was a case that he was contacted by the Sunday Indo to see if he had any comment, knew that article was therefore coming, and thought at this stage, well, you know what, I'm going to try and ride out the storm. But by this stage, he was like, no, I can't with this. So he kind of mentioned his family and his kids and protected them and all that kind of stuff. But it's real unsavory stuff coming into a provincial final for sure. Yeah,
the more worrying part of this is that, by all accounts, it seems that Derry GA were contacted about the likelihood of whatever claims were made a year ago. And it seems that, they were contacted by Nicola Gallagher's father, I think. And I don't think he got any correspondence back. And if that is the case, that's obviously allegedly. If that is the case, that's very, very worrying indeed.
The Tailteann Cup round one, we'll go through some of the fixtures here. Cavan 220, Laois 114. Cavan were fairly sluggish at the start of the game, but they very much kicked on, especially after half time. Paddy Lynch hit 1-3, including a penalty. Gerard McKiernan knocked over 4, including 3 frees. Jared Smith with 3, and Jonathan McCabe with a goal. For Laois, I mean, and it just feels like they're going from bad to worse in some senses. 1-2 for Evan O'Carroll, and Mark Barry scored 5. Limerick 2-16, Longford 1-16, a goal in either half, one from Cathal Downs and the other a penalty from Brian Donovan. And there seems to be loads of penalties. See Limerick over the line there. And actually, I think Paddy Christie, who's Longford manager, he had to leave his son's communion midway through to get to the match. So fair play to him for making it down for that.
That's gas, because Deise Slynn was in Clonus watching his son Rossa play in the under-20 final, and then booted it down to the Gaelic grounds as well. So if he probably didn't even get to embrace with his son after the 20 final, and Paddy Christie was in the same situation as well. That's mad.
I said communion.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like, as in, like, it's not exactly ideal to be leaving someone in a communion. It's not ideal to be leaving your son after losing the All-Ireland final as well. But I suppose that the whole "if you enlist you soldier" that we mentioned earlier probably comes home to roost again there.
Yeah, downbeat Waterford, unsurprisingly enough, 214 to 116. Pat Haverin with 5 points, Andrew Gilmore with 4. Eamon Brown and Oran Murdoch, they scored a goal apiece. For Waterford, Conor Murray scored a goal. Do Waterford have the lowest representation of county champions at inter-county level? Like Dermot Ryan, he's the only player from the Nair. So that's obviously sums up where Waterford football is at in terms of the totem pole there.
Is that a team within Waterford as well? Because there wouldn't be a hell of a lot of Ballygunner lads starting, a Ballygunner team that are going for 10 in a row this year in terms of county titles. Daisy Fitzgerald, who else started from Peter Hogan? Are they the only two that started from Ballygunner the other day? Patrick Fitzgerald came on, and
Paddy Levy came
on. I think they might be the only two. Like, if you have a team that's that dominant, the fact that there's only 2 starters is probably worrying, you'd have to say as well. Just some of the other Tailteann Cup games there as well. Finished Meath. This is the perfect result for Colin O'Rourke. No messing. No controversy, no one-score winner at like that. After getting knocked out of the Leinster Football Championship and ending up in a second-tier competition that they didn't want to be in, they had a comprehensive win over Tipperary, finished 119 to 11 points. That was the first win since beating Clare in early February. And Colin O'Rourke admitted that he's playing the long game with his new look Meath team, and that it will take months and years rather than weeks for the investment to pay off. Again, interesting to hear if the buy-in remains over a longer period of time. I think, like, compared to the Waterford Hurlers, I'd say Meath does look like a work in progress. It looks like a project. So I'd imagine Colin O'Rourke, and particularly given his standing within the county, that he'd be given the time. Aaron Lynch scored 1-3, Jordan Morris with 4, Thomas O'Reilly with 3, and Matthew Costello with 3. And for Tipperary, Jack Kennedy ended up with 3 points, Michael O'Reilly 2, and another 2 for Stephen O'Brien, and 2 for Mark Russell as well. But probably, a difficult enough start for Tipperary to the Tailteann Cup, you'd have to say.
And a difficult enough season overall. A lot of players out and injured, and basically not there either. For Manadrew, Wexford 113 apiece there. Antrim 318.
Just on that, Shane, Fermanagh were in pole position that game. I think they were 6 up at one stage. And Wexford got a goal through Ben Brosnan, who just seems like he's like Benjamin Button. He's been around forever. And his name is Ben also, which is interesting. But that was a big result for Wexford, because they would have been really on the back foot, and it was up in Brewster Park as well. So Wexford will be will take a lot of confidence from that.
Yeah, goals for Antrim for Adam Loughran, he scored a couple, and Rory McCann in the 318 to 212 win over Andy Moran's Leitrim. Offaly beat London 214 to 11. Keane Farrell, he scored 2-4. Dylan Hyland, he scored 4 points. For London, Liam Gavigan had 3, and Aidan McLaughlin scored a couple, along with Joshua Obahor and Conal Gallagher 2 apiece. And Wicklow 113, Carlow 17 points. So Carlow came from 5 points behind after 58 minutes to win by 1. That's a fair old going with that late flourish, and Jonah Dunn with the winner at the death.
Yeah, they were 5 down with 64 minutes played, and they kicked the next 6.
Was it even 64 minutes? Right. Okay.
Yeah, they kicked the next 6 to win the game. It was weird. Wicklow lost the centre back Patrick O'Kane to a black card. I thought it was harsh enough from my vantage point, but a lot of other people didn't, so maybe it wasn't. And Wicklow could not get their hands on the ball. Mark Jackson was a very, very good keeper. He was going long with the kickouts, and Carlow were just dominating the high ball. Ross Dunphy was brilliant for them. He kicked 4 from play, and they got a good bounce from the bench. Aaron Ammon came on, got a score, and Jonah Dunn got that winner as well. A massive win for Carlow. They were beaten by 8 points when they met in the Leinster Championship only 5 weeks ago. And as I mentioned, Oisin McConville earlier, he'll be pulling his hair out at how they didn't at least get a result in this game. He'd be absolutely baffled by how they lost this game, because they were in a really, really good spot. Owen Darcy was brilliant for them. He got 1-4, 1 point from a mark. Conor Fee was brilliant as well. He got 4 points. But yeah, I'm not sure how they lost the game, to be honest with you.
And then finally, Kildare beat Sligo in the All-Ireland Under-20 final, 117 to 12 points there. So that's their second All-Ireland title at this level in the space of 5 years, albeit that was a Kerry team that didn't have Clifford and Sean O'Shea there a few years back, but still brilliant for them all the same. And they continue to bring through talent. Well, you have to have talent if you're going to win these All-Ireland titles. Killian Brown scored 1-1, Adam Fanning 3, Colin Bolton and Sean Hannafin and Oisin O'Sullivan had 2 points apiece. And then can't not mention Thomas von Engelbrechten. Tomas van.
Yeah, no, the fact that it's Tomas makes it even better.
What a name. Like, I used to work with Miguel Delaney in the Sunday Tribune. Obviously, he works for the Independent in London these days. But talk about a mixture of 2 backgrounds.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Like, for Kildare now, they're obviously beaten in the final last year, won the first Under-20 in 2018. It's just about translating that to senior success now. And I don't think I'm speaking out of turn. I would imagine that, if the Kildare job comes up in a couple of years, that I'd imagine that Davy Burke would be number 1 on their hit list. And if that is the case, he'd have all his 2018 team. He'd have last year's All-Ireland final team. He'd have all this talent to work with potentially in a couple of years. And that would be an exciting prospect. Because I know there's a lot of people at Kildare disappointed with it, shall we say, to say the least, that they lost into Roscommon. And that's not to say Glenn Ryan and the lads are not giving it their all in Kildare. I'm sure they are. They'll be hoping to build on that 2-point defeat to Dublin. But, like, Kildare just need to translate this into senior success. Like, it's not as if they don't have the talent. They have it in spades. It's just a matter of getting as many of these lads through to senior level.
Okay, and then we obviously have to finish up with the goat of the week, which, of course, as always, it'd actually be a shame if we did prepare it at this stage.
Yeah, well, I just quickly, because we kind of agreed beforehand that we want the viewers to give their goat of the week as well. So we'll give a hurling one and a football one. Like we don't prepare it, obviously. Shane McGuigan will be my football one. And we probably didn't talk about him enough. Maybe in the Ulster final chat, thought he gave an absolute masterclass. And from a hurling point of view, we were obviously didn't have a great amount of hurling this weekend. I feel like Tony Kelly has done more in other weeks to earn goat of the week, maybe that he didn't, but I'm probably still going to give him for the 13 points he got against Waterford. So Shane McGuigan and Tony Kelly for me.
I'd be thinking of giving it to Pierce Ode McCrickard for getting 15 points that keeps Down up in the Joe McDonagh Cup. So I think him. If you're looking at players from that Clare Waterford game, I think Cathal Malone wouldn't be too far away. I'm also thinking there must be a young lad in there somewhere for Clare that really shone over the weekend. I mean, fair play to Adam Hogan. He goes out and performs well, even though he knows he can't play in the under-20 final this season, which, as we keep saying, is a...
Aaron Nyland deserves a mention for Galway as well. Also, there was a mad head-high tackle in that game that we didn't talk about. You know, it was on the OurGame social channels and everyone can see it there. But I genuinely am a bit worried about some of these tackles that are going in. I think we need to stamp them out before it becomes... You know, before we're seeing 3 or 4 in every game and people with potentially life-changing injuries, I just don't like it.
Yeah, and then in the football, who am I going to give the goat of the week to? Do you know what? I was going to say, would I give it to one of the Dubs for their performance against Louth? But, you know, it was such an annihilation. It's very difficult to give. Do you know what? I'm going to give it to Oran Lynch for saving 3 penalties. Because, to be fair, they were brilliant saves.
That's well earned now, in fairness. That is well earned.
Yeah, let's see what the comments are. Oran Lynch and didn't catch the hurling this weekend, says Red Lad. Tony Kelly, GOAT. Waterford with the prize for keeping a team waiting the longest. Bit of a random question, just wondering. Have you lads ever been to Achill, says Pádraig O'Malley?
I've never been there.
Presume you're an Achill native. No, I've never been there. I've been to Mayo several times, but never to Achill.
What's the Wi-Fi like, or the broadband? We might do a show from there some stage.
Be a grand old spot to do it. A reminder, speaking of our show, it's brought to you by orgaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off the great range that they have there. Also, we've got the Live Club GA fundraisers. We did a brilliant one in Rowan Moore recently, so email events@ourgame.ie to get information on how we can do this for you as well. And I think that's about the height of it. If you want to get the audio podcast, go to patreon.com/OurGame. Michael, we'll do it again on Thursday, will we?
We will. We'll be going at lunchtime on Thursday as well, Shane.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you then, folks.